warm welcome from me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Helen Martin, one of the directors of the Gateway Alliance, and it is lovely to welcome you to our session this morning. Some of the colleagues in the room were part of our MFL session as part of our curriculum CPD programme last academic year, so welcome back. For those who are new, then warm welcome. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. We're online for the morning. We are going to have some breaks throughout the morning because obviously we were just talking, I'm sure none of you are used to sitting for 3 hours online. You're very much more active in your day jobs, I know, normally anyway. So we will be having some comfort breaks and some time to sort of break out and talk to each other, hopefully, as well. If you're not used to Zoom, hopefully it's relatively straightforward and there won't be anything too technical for you to be able to need to master. Useful items are obviously mute and unmute, and hopefully you'll be able to find that. There's usually a bar along the bottom of your screen with some functions on it. If you can see chat as well, if you press on chat, you can type messages in that we can all see. Obviously, Crista, who will be presenting, will be able to sort of see your comments or questions, and so will I, and I can post, share those with Crista if she's sort of deep involved in her presentation or in an activity. So please do use the chat to communicate to each other and share ideas as well. We might be going into a breakout room a little bit later on, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but it's very easy. You literally just press a button and it's as if you're going into sort of a space where you can have a table conversation as you would in a normal face-to-face session, but we'll explain more about that later on during the session. I think that's all in terms of logistics. If you do have any problems with sound or visuals or anything like that, please do pop something in the chat and I'll see if I can help you. I think that in terms of housekeeping, that's all I need to say. I'd love to give a warm welcome to Crista Hazell, who is leading our session today. I'm really delighted she could be with us. Crista has got a huge amount of experience in terms of supporting schools with developing modern foreign language practice, and has come today through our link with Independent Thinking, who is an organisation that has some fantastic associates that work with them in terms of really developing and inspiring us in terms of teaching and learning across the board. Crista is going to be, obviously, we've given her a large brief in terms of what we would like to cover today. So there's going to be lots of information, ideas and, pieces of advice and suggestions and all sorts really we're going to be covering today. But please do, give us your feedback in terms of how we can further develop you. And if there's any aspects that we cover today that you want us to look into in more depth, then please let us know. And I'd be really keen to invite Crista back to look at some things with us moving forward into the future. So I'm going to hand over now to Crista so we can get on with the session, and I'll be here in the background if you need me for anything. But warm welcome, Crista, anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for, coming today and this session. I have obviously scheduled some breaks in. When Helen and I spoke, it was months ago, wasn't it, Helen? We spoke about this ages ago. I was really excited, but I had this list. So there is a lot that Helen has given me. I think it's like the ultimate challenge, but I say that I'm not going to rattle through this. If you've got any questions, obviously Helen can monitor those and obviously ask me those in the chat, but also you drop them in the chat as well, and obviously I'll save the chat. And if you want to respond to me or email me about something, then obviously you can do either through Helen or indeed directly to me. But thank you so much for coming this morning. I have been teaching for over 20 years in primary and secondary, and my first love is languages, so I'm probably going to get really excited, and you'll probably get that, or I hope so anyway. You might want some pen and paper, so to jot some things down. I will be sharing some of the slides with you as well, so obviously you can have those and use those as you want to. But like I say, thanks for coming, and I hope you've got a drink. And I'm sure you've all been to the loo, because you always tell your students anyway, make sure you go to the loo, make sure you've got stuff. So yes, I hope you have too, because sometimes we don't always extend that to ourselves, do we? Okay then. So hopefully you can all see my screen, so that'll be a good thing. Yeah, brilliant. I've got a thumbs up, so that's always good. It always takes a bit of a while. There we go then. Right, okay then. So obviously I'm Crista from Independent Thinking, and those are my details there, but obviously you can contact me through Helen too. And as I said, the ultimate challenge, I thought I'd call it a merry morning of MFL, because obviously it rings quite nicely. I know in primary you can teach languages. It doesn't have to be modern, foreign languages. It can be languages. So, but I just thought it sounded really nice. But there we go. So I've been teaching for over 20 years. I wrote a book recently, predominantly for secondary. I've been in MFL and leadership for a long time. I'm on the external group for the APPG for modern foreign languages, and also Oracy, which is an absolute privilege. And if you're not aware of the National Languages Recovery Programme, it may be worthwhile just checking that out. Again, there's a focus on secondary, but also they are raising the profile of languages in primary school too. And it's a really interesting group because they're making moves in government, and government are listening to what they're saying. She says, hopefully, fingers crossed. There's various people like Baroness Cousins and the MP Antoniazzi as well, who are really incredible people. And there's lots of other people like the British Academy and various others that have signed up with them. So they're a really interesting group. I also work for Independent Thinking and also the Association for Language Learning, which is obviously language learning charity for members, for teachers, people like yourselves who are interested in languages, and we're there to support you. So before we kind of crack into this morning, really, I just wanted to say, I know you're going to be sat there, so please get up and wander around as well. Please feel free to do that, because sometimes just being sat there is just hard, and we don't do it at all. I mean, I know last year we had to get used to doing it, sitting at home, teaching from home, and it was hard work, really hard work, especially you guys in primary, because you're always moving around. I don't think you ever sit down, often crouch down on the floor, sat down, maybe if you're lucky on the floor for a handful of minutes if you're working with a learner, but there we go. But I thought something for you to think about and to sort of consider for today, really. So think about languages in your primary setting. You know, what do you know already? And there'll be some of you who'll be like, oh yeah, I know this. Yeah, I know this. And hopefully this will reinforce you, your thoughts, your thinking, and the work that you're doing. But also some of you might be thinking like, okay, I'm just kind of getting to grips with the basics. I'm hunting and gathering kind of new ideas, and hopefully there'll be things that I share with you today, or things that and that then I send on to you that actually you can take and use in your own setting. Obviously you might take some of these ideas and put them and incorporate them into your work, and obviously as a result of that you might also be thinking about, okay, I really like that idea, but for my learners, this is appropriate, and create something new, which would be really exciting. So I hope that you do. And also, what level of evidence, what evidence of learning can you take from today? Because it's all right having a lovely morning that Helen's arranged, but actually, obviously, we want you to do something with it. And it's not a test, it's not a requirement, it's entirely up to you. You know your schedule. We all know how busy school teachers are, but actually, hopefully from today, you can take something and implement it within your setting. So overview for today's session then, as I said, Helen gave me quite a list based on your feedback. So we've got obviously an overview of primary languages, looking at deep dive in primary languages. Then we're going to have, I say breakout room, we're going to have a break there, probably, you possibly need it. But you can talk obviously amongst yourselves. And obviously if any of you, I have to say, do need to zip off for a comfort break, then do, but make sure you come back. And then obviously we've got differentiation in the second section, and then Helen also asked me to look at raising the profile of languages in your school, and also primary languages resources, but they're free ones, because I didn't want to come here today to sell you something. I just thought it'd be quite nice in the work that I do with cultural partners and things like that, actually not only developing resources, but also looking at what's out there, what's good out there, and what you might not already know about. You might do some of it. Some of it is well known, but some of it is less well known. But I'll be sharing that with you too. So yeah, for today, as I said, you might want to need a pen and piece of paper. You might just make notes as you're going along. But one of the things that's always quite nice to do, if you've got an A4 piece of paper or you've got a sheet in your pad, paper in front of you, then just put letters down of the alphabet and see if while I'm talking and while I'm delivering today, actually you can, if I say something interesting, just fill in the letters really with single words. It's always quite nice to do that. It's like a bullet reminder of what you've learned, what you've picked up, something interesting, etc. You don't have to, but it's something to just keep thinking, and then you've got a record. But there we go. Also, actually, I should say, if you don't like A to Z, you could do 30 circles. So 30 circles on a piece of paper and fill in the circles as and when you want to. Entirely up to you. You don't have to write words. You can obviously draw if you do 30 circles too. Entirely up to you. So then, getting on to the stuff that we're here for. So the languages timeline then, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, but if I just set this up historically. So in June 2012, obviously, as part of the National Curriculum Review, the decision was made to introduce languages into all primary schools to teach, so all teachers should teach a foreign language from year 3 to year 6. It was obviously, the idea was to add breadth to the curriculum, and the new foreign language programs of study were going to offer a balance of spoken and written work. The expectation is that pupils will obviously speak in sentences with appropriate pronunciation and express ideas with simple ideas with clarity. Pupils learn and write short phrases and short sentences from memory, and also have an understanding of basic grammar across this year 3 to year 6 period. And also they are acquainted with songs and poems, and teachers should focus on making substantial progress within one language. Now, obviously, this has changed somewhat, because actually within primary, you don't have to just continue to teach one language. In year 3, you may have, a teacher with a specialism who perhaps can introduce Spanish, and then actually that teacher either leaves the school or the class moves on, and the year 4 or year 5 teacher doesn't have the same specialism, but they do have a language specialism, let's say in Japanese. And if they have Japanese, then actually you can introduce that as a language, so they can have 2 different languages, and so they've had a primary experience of Spanish and then Japanese, but you have to build on the skills. So in addition to teaching the language itself, the grammar, sentence structure, etc., you also need to be teaching, as part of primary languages framework, how to learn a language. So actually those skills are transferable regardless of what language that you do. And that's quite interesting. It's quite challenging to do, because obviously you want to make sure that learners are confident in the basics, and obviously the sound spelling link, etc. And you can ask the question, how can you do that successfully and well if you're doing different languages? But you can do that. It's within the, not rules as such, but you are able to do that. And obviously, as teachers come and go within school communities, then actually often specialisms can go too. So actually you do have to introduce something. So that's not an issue. You don't, if you start with French or Spanish, German, Latin, Greek, then actually you don't necessarily have to continue with that for that 4-year period. So yeah, it's obviously a very ambitious program, and this is impacted on Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. And obviously September 2013, then we saw obviously the programs of study for Key Stage 3 and 2 and 3 being published. In November 2016, there was a Modern Foreign Languages Pedagogy Review. And those first, which has been quite instrumental, probably and mostly in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. And as a result of that, we've seen the National Centres for Excellence in Language Pedagogy, NCELP as they're also known, sort of come up, and there's 9 schools around England. I was going to say UK, but it is England, and out of that there are some hub schools who are working with them. And then in 2019 we had an Ofsted framework. Now all of those hub schools, actually I should say for Hazell, are actually secondary, but they do work with primary schools as well, feeding into that system there. So that's obviously the overview. And I have to say, since obviously June 2012, since we've had to teach, or there is an expectation, it's statutory requirement to teach languages at primary school, then actually those learners, of course, with 4 years of language learning have moved into secondary schools, which is interesting because obviously we would be seeing an impact. That's the expectation, or that's certainly the expectation from the framework, and indeed the people that like to come and visit schools. Key Stage 2 language teaching then, according to the framework and the statutory guidance, we're looking at 30 to 60 minutes per week. You can have block timetable arrangements, of course you can, and obviously it can be taught very intensively over 1 to 2 weeks within one term. And obviously your school will have decided with you, perhaps if you're the subject lead, if you're the languages lead within your school, then you may well have decided what you're going to do, what's best for your learners, what's best for the curriculum with the means that you have and the expertise that you have. So as a result of the new the framework and the new Ofsted frameworks introduced in 2019, deep dives became the thing, okay? And it's really interesting how the language is just being used for lots of different things. I think I even heard it on the radio the other day, a deep dive into Latin American music. And I thought, oh gosh, every single teacher in the land is probably like twitching a little bit, just because to us it means something quite different. So obviously, as a result of the Ofsted deep dives, then we need to be looking at having a curriculum statement for languages. So it's all right to have this, but we need to have a curriculum statement. And that curriculum statement doesn't need to be onerous. You don't need a massive file with lots and lots of evidence. And if you're as old as I am, then, you know, we were told initially you needed a big folder of evidence and collect all this stuff. So you hand that folder over when they come in, and you know, just they pore over it and might come to your curriculum area. Well, that's not the case actually now, and it can just be one A4 sheet, could be one paragraph on one A4 sheet of paper, your curriculum statement. And this is so long as it covers the intention of your languages curriculum, because there is an expectation that you will be clear on what your curriculum is, your curriculum statement. And again, like I say, it doesn't have to be long and onerous. And that curriculum statement is obviously going to explain to any visitors, this could be parents too, but obviously Ofsted when they come in, what you will teach from years 3 to year 6. The content, obviously, the language skills, you know, the listen, speaking, reading, writing, the word order, the sound spelling links, the sentence structure, SPAG, culture, etc. That's that curriculum statement. And also how you're going to implement that. So what your the how you're going to teach this. So you've said the what you're going to teach, and also now the how in your curriculum statement. And you could mention the frequency here if you want to. You don't have to. If you don't tell them, they will ask you, or they'll certainly ask the senior leaders who they have the initial discussion with. So, and then also they want to know the impact of your curriculum. So if you're saying that you teach languages for 60 minutes per week, this is what you're going to teach across year 3 to year 6. And again, it could be subject headings. It doesn't have to be the whole detail. Remember, this could be on one paragraph across one piece of A4 paper. It doesn't have to be long and onerous and as detailed, but they want to know the impact. So what are your learners going to be able to do as a result of this curriculum, the way in which you've taught it at 30, 60 minutes a week, or these block timetable arrangements? What are they going to be able to do at the end of it? So what can they hear? What can they recognise? What can they read, see, use, recall, construct, say, write? And obviously we have to make sure more than ever that it's age appropriate. So the curriculum in year 3 is not the same as the curriculum and the language learning within year 6. There is a marked difference. And also we have to bear in mind what they can do in English, and we have to be able to mirror that, almost not identically, but mirror that within languages, which is quite a challenge when we put it like that. So our curriculums have to have a clear purpose and clear design. We need to know what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, why we're teaching it, and the impact on those kids, which actually, when we think about it, we don't teach for them to not know things, we teach to know. So hopefully that will serve then as a guide, and it's a really nice curriculum statement. So then a curriculum should provide scope for learners from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4. Obviously, for you guys, it's Key Stage 2. But really, if you work in an all-through school, and I don't know if any of you do, then your curriculum that you start within Key Stage 2, within year 3 to 6, actually, you might want to see if that marries up with Key Stage 3 and 4, because it is that journey. And ultimately, any visitors will be expecting the curriculum provision at Key Stage 2 within languages to be robust, that actually when they go to Key Stage 3, whether it's your school or somewhere else, that can be built upon. Now, obviously, we know that there are challenges in relation to that, finding the time to communicate with local secondaries, etc. And I'm not bad-mouthing secondaries, I spent a lot of time teaching secondaries, but actually it would be really nice if secondary colleagues could value the work that you do in primary, because you are doing a lot of really substantial work. And in the curriculum framework for primary languages, actually it's very clear that you are building the foundation, and if that is completely discarded by secondary colleagues, then that's not appropriate. But that's on their head, that's not you. But if you are teaching in an all-through school, then and you're not already having those discussions, then I would definitely start that. And again, it wouldn't be on your head, it would be on the secondary colleagues. So obviously we need to make sure that it's coherently planned, and we need to make sure that those language learning skills for future learning, but enable future learning, are being taught. And obviously we're ensuring that learning should remain over time. We don't just do it one day. We're not like writing a message in the sand and it's here today, but then as soon as that tide comes in, we've slept, or the learners have slept, then actually they've forgotten all about it. It should remain and develop over time. So any structures, any language that we've taught them, they're recycling that, using that, putting that into statements, formulating their own sentences and phrases. And obviously this doesn't have to be in year 3. We're talking about building this up over a 4-year period. And then obviously we're building on prior learning, and again, which should be age appropriate. We also need to make sure that the curriculum has sufficient breadth. Obviously, for every learner should be able to access it. And obviously, we need to, so that's prior attainment groups, high SEND, so low, mid, high, and SEND learners, and also EAL learners as well. We need to, the expectation is that every learner in your school between year 3 to year 6 will be learning a language, and if they're not, then there needs to be justification why. And if they're being withdrawn because they need some intensive work within another subject area, perhaps within English, because actually English isn't their home language, or they're a student new into the area, they're a refugee student, there's lots of different makeups of these students, and actually if they're being withdrawn from languages because that time is being used for English, then actually there's SLT will need to explain why that's happening and what's being put in place to support them actually when they do come back into language learning with you. And obviously, is the curriculum building, giving learners knowledge and cultural capital that they need to succeed in life, because it's an absolute requirement, and this is something that actually Ofsted are very, very hot on. So a languages curriculum should be appropriate for learners, every single learner, regardless of their context. We have the highest of expectations for every single learner regardless of their situation, if they do have SEND, if they do have a particular need, if they do, high learning need, whatever it may be, that we have high expectations of them. And that's reflected in the teaching, in their curriculum. It's obviously carefully sequenced curriculum, which is quite a new thing, because obviously previously your curriculum, it was broad and balanced, etc. But now they're looking at carefully sequenced, because obviously Ofsted and the DFE, etc., have been looking at the science of learning and how we learn languages, and looking at the research. They've obviously decided that if we limit the vocabulary but carefully sequence it, so we're using a stock of phrases and language and recalling those. So we've decided what we're going to teach them, why we're teaching them it, but actually we're going to keep recycling same structures, same grammar, etc., and just developing that over time. And that obviously takes them on a journey. So they're building upon it, and they are really learning it because they can recall it, they can say it, they can read it, write it, hear it and understand it, and produce beautiful work with that too. It should be engaging and co-constructed, which is always quite interesting, certainly in primary, but yeah, co-constructing with your learners, but yes. And then full of culture and cultural experiences to really develop cultural capital, because again, it's a very hot topic. So what does Ofsted say then? Well, Ofsted says this, and you can see it right there. And I've taken this out of Ofsted documents so you can see what they mean. So the new Ofsted framework it's trying to address the balance and put the wider curriculum at the heart of the inspection process. And leadership are going to be judged on, so this is school leadership now, so the leaders within your school will be judged on the curriculum, whether it has purpose and a clear design. Also, how well the curriculum is implemented through well-taught and appropriately sequenced content, thoughtfully designed assessment practice, and consideration of an appropriate model of progression. Well, okay, it's quite a mouthful there, but essentially, when Ofsted do call, and I'm going to talk through all of that process too, but when Ofsted do call, this is what they've said about curriculum, this is what they want, but actually we know that there's no one size fits all for curriculum, so whatever we design should be appropriate for the learners within your school. And there are an awful lot of products and items out there that you can take off the shelf and bring to your school, and I'm not criticizing any of that, absolutely not, but what you do need to then do is make sure that you develop it for your learners, whether that's through differentiation, whether it's through stretch and challenge, whether it's through actually we can't do all of this because this is designed for 2 hours a week and we only have 30 minutes per week. So what are we going to do with this to make it work? And actually we can't teach all of that if it's designed for 2 hours a week and we bought this package in because it's there, it's resourced, we want to use that, we think it's really good, it's good for our school, which is great because then you don't have to worry about creating your own resources, etc. Then actually you just need to make sure that you slim down what you're doing and break it down from what are you going to focus on in year 3, what you're going to focus on in year 4, year 5, year 6. And obviously the best laid plans, we all have plans, we'll just see, and those may be subject to change. And if anything that's the last year has taught us, then things obviously change and we don't always know about it. But as long as we respond positively and we have this plan and idea in place, same if your teacher, obviously your specialist teacher, you've bought in a package that they really love this and it's a subject that they can do well and confidently, and then they depart or they move into senior leadership and can't teach that so much anymore, whatever the context may be, then actually how are we going to use this, and obviously who's going to take that on. And it may well be that you do have to change languages or you do have to change tack, but as long as it's appropriate for the learners in your group and you can talk about that to your leaders so they know So any visitor coming into your school to do a deep dive, then actually it's perfectly explained, and they may come to your subject area to investigate further, or they may not. We will see. So what can we expect from a deep dive then? And I thought if I dropped this into a model, it might be easier to read. It might be easier to kind of break it down. Okay. So what can we expect from a deep dive? So the senior leaders obviously will take the call. Now, this is often around, I think it's by 11:30 a.m. on certain days of the week. Often because they inform you one day, so the phone call could come on Monday, and they're going to come and visit on Tuesday. In some situations, often if it's a result of concern or a huge amount of parental complaints as a result of perhaps something. There was I live in Bristol, and there was a secondary school in Bristol who had there were seemingly or allegedly quite a lot of bullying, and the pastoral care team seemingly, or according to these group of parents, weren't doing anything about it, or certainly the parents didn't think they were doing enough about it. They weren't satisfied, so they put in a series of complaints. This became quite numerous, and actually they received a phone call that morning to say that they were at the gates and they would be entering the school premises at 8 a.m. At 9 a.m, which is interesting. It's quite rare, I have to say. Please don't panic that this is just going to happen. It's very rare, but something massive would have triggered it. So obviously some of the things about harassment, bullying, sexual assault within schools, which is seen in the press, that could trigger something major like that. But ordinarily, this is not the case. They don't just appear, phone from the gate and say, we're coming in at 9 o'clock, and then that's it. So normally they call beforehand by about 11:30, and you know that because by midday there's often the head's PA has emailed the whole school to say that there's an extra special meeting in the school hall at the end of the day, and everybody must attend, and that's often underlined and in bold. But yeah, so they take the call, and then there's top level discussions, and those top level discussions with SLT and Ofsted, obviously they will be looking at the quality of education, the overall picture of the school, and then they are just finding out. They obviously have all the data from the data dashboard, so they've had all the school's data, they can see all of that beforehand. So if you're the curriculum lead then for languages, then they will discuss the curriculum, perhaps with the curriculum lead directly, and they will be looking at the content and sequencing of your curriculum. Then they'll be out and about. They will have spoken obviously to senior leaders, so they'll have a good picture of the school. They'll have spoken to the curriculum lead, and if it's happening, a deep dive in languages, then they will know your curriculum intentions, how you're going to implement it, and what the impact is and has been to date. And then they will go out and about to visit lessons and look at students' work and meet teachers and meet pupils to see if what you've said about your curriculum and why you teach it and how you implement it happens, but also the impact of that. So that's really important to get right. Like I said, it doesn't have to be onerous, doesn't have to be long, because they just want to make sure that that's the picture of the school. Okay, sounds fairly straightforward, I think, but we will see. They want to make sure that it all connects together. So attainment, so for example, if we look at impact, so what we've said, or the curriculum lead or SLT has said, that happens in languages and what students can do, that they can actually do it. Now, obviously, there's no national tests and assessments for languages in primary schools, but equally, they will be looking at that framework. And if your year 5 learners are in year 5 and have had 2 years of language learning, they will be expecting to see certain things. So not just simple sentences, they will be expecting to see longer, more developed sentences. And if your language has changed, obviously, that might be quite hard to show progress of. But they will then be looking at, what they will look at, it's not necessarily what the students can do, but how they've learnt the language and what they learnt within the previous language, perhaps in year 3 and year 4 lessons. And we know what students' memories are like. They can't remember everything. It's not something that you just press a button and they can just automatically produce. But actually they will be looking at what they've learned and how they've managed to do that and what they can remember and how they remember things. And their questions when they do meet pupils and talk to them will be age appropriate as well. But yeah, so hopefully that's not too terrifying for anyone. So when they come into school, then what will they want to do? So I've already said, meet and talk to SLT, talk to curriculum leads, observe lessons, and this could be for 20, maybe 30 minutes. They might stay for the whole lesson, but really, and this is not a hard and fast rule, but when you look at documentation, it says that actually it should be for about 20 minutes, should, not will be, not must be, but should be. Now, it could be longer, it could be shorter, because actually they may have seen something and gone, oh yeah, okay, I'm really happy here. I'm gonna disappear off. I'm gonna go see another class because actually there's 2 or 3 classes. Or they may decide to stay longer. And if they decide to stay longer, please do not think that actually it's because something is not quite right. It could be that, but it could also be that they are loving your lesson, they are loving the energy in the room, they are loving the students, they are loving what you're doing, and actually don't want to go. I know when Michael Wardle is the the Ofsted languages lead, if you like, and he's a former languages teacher. He is a really nice guy. I've not been inspected by him, but he's a really nice, personable guy. And I'm fairly certain that actually it would take him back to the classroom and he would be really excited about what was going on. And so want to be involved. I can't say that for everybody because I don't know them all, but equally, you just don't know. They might want to stay because they're enjoying it. It's not because we're doing something wrong. And sometimes because we're human and because we know it's a deep dive and we don't let school down, we want to be our very best selves. Actually, we think of the negatives automatically. Well, please don't. Please let that, just put that fear aside. They obviously want to look at pupils' work, so they'll be moving around the classroom, even though you probably put all the information, whether it's a lesson plan idea. You don't have to provide a lesson plan. You don't have to give them any direction, but if you don't, they'll probably come and talk to you. There was some discussion many years ago of that, you have to hand your planning document over, so you have to. They want to see evidence of planning, and that's still the case. They will want to see it. And this, you don't have to do this. It's not written in law or rule anywhere. Your school may decide it. I've always said when I was, head of languages and also assistant head, if you don't want them to ask you questions about it, just provide it for them. So I always make sure that my teams provide data, lesson plan, not the entire thing, but evidence of planning, what came before it, what's going to come after it, just so they don't come up and ask the teacher, and they won't disrupt your lesson and but there might be a moment where students are working and then they come over perhaps to talk to you, or they might ask to see you afterwards. And again, not a bad thing, could be a good thing, but I just cut out that potential stress for some people, not for everybody, and just make sure they have it. But again, you don't have to do that. That's entirely up to you. Be consistent with what your school asks is what I would advise. They obviously want to talk to pupils, talk to teachers, delivering the lesson. What happens in your classroom, is that the same that happens everywhere? With all the year 5 classes, if you have more than one, or year 6 classes, they want to look at assessment and tracking information to make sure you are maybe tracking them, so where they were at the start of the year or the start of this series of lessons, and actually where they're going to as well, whether learners are on target or not. And they may focus then on specific groups as well. So that could be free school meal children, it could be military children if you have those in school, it could be boys, it could be groups, it could be anything. You don't know. And then obviously they may ask some questions to the students, and conduct some further research because they're interested, because actually the curriculum intention statement that you've given them, they want to make sure that that's happening, and that teaching's happening the way you say it is, and that learners are learning, and there's evidence of that. And then as a result of that, they will sort of go away, look at all the school documents, any that have been provided, so the curriculum plans from the subjects, and then they'll have final discussions with SLT. Okay. So what will they want to know then? Well, obviously I've said this a lot, but the curriculum statement, where the lessons to be observed when they do come out to observe lessons fit in the sequence. So what happened beforehand and what will happen next. So obviously we can plan, I don't know, for the week, and actually if you have multiple lessons a week, something may happen. There may be, I don't know, school injections, there may be illness, etc., and actually we don't then complete this. So we can't just necessarily, and we know this because we're, experienced teachers, you don't just carry on just because you planned it. Obviously we need to go back and teach that. So what will happen next, what came before it, and that is new, and this is part of their sequencing that they're really interested in. So they're interested in what came before, to see if actually you're recycling the language, because we can't teach learners everything, and actually languages is one subject of many. And actually we need to then make sure that what we are doing with what we're choosing to teach our learners, are they recycling this? Are they remembering it? Because again, learning should remain over time. So actually it's not that writing in the sand, here today, gone tomorrow. They can remember it. And again, we know that learners can't possibly remember everything all of the time. And then obviously they may well want to know what you're doing in languages for all pupils and specific groups of learners, that you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and that you can demonstrate the impact on your pupils. That pupils are making progress in line with national expectations. So that's the framework, what are the expectations? Those are the expectations. Look at those, that they know how to learn a language, can construct sentences, know how they're learning a language and why they're learning it. And obviously that pupils that you're supporting your pupils in language learning. Obviously, as brilliant teachers, that's exactly what we do every day for every subject, not just languages. And obviously that pupils enjoy language lessons. Not all of them, we know that. I used to leap out of bed and love being a languages teacher, but you know what? Not all students love it, and we just have to, but we take them with us. We don't leave them behind. So what will they want to see then? And in the simplest terms, a happy teacher teaching, obviously. We know it, I know it's stressful. I'm not an inspector. It's not something I've ever wanted to do. I do support colleagues with as a specialist leader in education for languages. I do those mock kind of things. I hate the term mock stead. I really don't like them. But if somebody says, can you just come and see what we do? Can you just make sure that actually it lines up with this? And so actually what we say that we do is you can see in the classroom. Can you do that for us, Crista? And I'll go, yeah, okay, then that's fine. But then obviously have a discussion with teachers, make sure it's not too stressful, and make sure that it's not a mock stead. I'm just observing what they do to give back positive praise. And actually going back to the deep dives, Ofsted don't necessarily feed back to you. They will feed back to the senior leaders team. They may well have a discussion with you, say thank you very much, and then leave. If they've been in your classroom, they may just depart your classroom because then they don't want to disrupt the flow of learning by saying, oh, thank you very much, off we go now, we're just going to go to your colleague. They're not going to do that. And I know that you know that, but sometimes it seems a bit rude for them to be there for 30 minutes or something, 20, 30 minutes of your time, maybe even 3/4 of the lesson, and then just go. You think, oh, they didn't even say something, and they've been in my lesson talking to my kids. Well, there we go. So they want to see happy teachers teaching. They want to see happy pupils learning. Obviously, a safe and positive learning environment. We know that. Obviously, a classroom where they can come and see that your curriculum statement is clear All of that has to be clear. All right. So what you're teaching, why, how you're teaching it, and are your pupils learning the way in which you're teaching it? That's really important, because if they're not learning it, then actually there's an expectation that you will adjust your teaching so that they do learn it. And then obviously the impact. So what can pupils do in languages? How does this fit with what you said that they can do in the curriculum document? Now, depending on where you are in the academic year, obviously you may be, when you look at your curriculum statement, and you may have said, oh, you know, in year 3 this, and there may be one line. Then, you know, all students will speak in sentences, for example. So actually, within year 4, then in, I don't know, let's say October, then obviously learners haven't necessarily learned much new content for year 4, because if you only have 30 minutes or one 60-minute block a week, or you may actually have that 1 to 2 week block much later in the academic year. So actually, can you demonstrate it? Well, no, you can't, can you? Because they're not learning languages at that time. And it may well be that they come in and it's not a languages day. So what do you do about that? Well, then they can't see it, can they? So what they will do, they won't expect you to change your timetable or expect you to change your day, but they will expect to see evidence that they can, it does fit with that statement. So what you said they can do, they can do. So previous work, etc. So again, I'm not telling you to go away and build a big folder, to build documentation of evidence of anything, but you know your curriculum plan, you know your timetable. If it's not then just make sure you have that evidence there, and actually then you can pass it on to SLT if you do get the call, or when you do get the call, and then actually they have it so they can see it there. So they may come to your classroom just to see you as a teacher. Maybe if you're again the languages lead for your school, they may talk to you then. Excuse me. They may want to talk to you then, but actually they will. They'll just have to see it based on the evidence that you've provided, whether that's previous people's books, you know, or previous year's books, and obviously wall displays, etc. It's always quite good actually when you do, whether it's you or whether it's your TA or whether it's a group of you, when you do displays, take a photograph of them so you've got photographic evidence. Actually, you can just drop that in. It's always quite nice to see. And again, I'm not saying you have to, but it just makes it easier to provide that if they can't necessarily see it. And obviously they want to see differentiation, that you're taking every learner with you, not just necessarily teaching to the top or teaching to those low ability learners, and that you are scaffolding learning and providing stretch and challenge for all learners. So one of the questions that I often get asked actually is, if they want to talk to me, what are they going to ask? So I can go, well, don't panic, because they are going to talk to you. You know, that it is likely they will talk to you, and it's likely they will ask their questions, a series of questions. And those questions could be, well, there are numerous questions, but actually there are only so many questions you can ask about, you know, curriculum, about progress, about intervention. So having done a bit of research and talked with colleagues that have gone through and schools that I've worked with who have gone through deep dives, and I've supported with those, I've collated some questions here. Now, these are not hard and fast, exact, they will ask me exactly this question, or they didn't ask me this question. They're just a series of questions. So the types of questions, for example, regarding curriculum, these are the types of things they might want to ask you. They are not exact and they are not exhaustive. So they might not ask these about the curriculum. They might ask you very specifically about implementation. So, but you know, it depends. It's about your setting. They're coming to see what you said on your curriculum statement. So they may ask something like, how off the shelf is your scheme? Is the scheme that you use, and how does it link to the national curriculum? Because it's brilliant that colleagues have developed incredible resources that actually we can buy into. But if we're just buying that in, are we checking that it links to the national curriculum? Have we, you know, match that across, and maybe thinking, oh, I've got time for that, I've got all of this other stuff I need to do. And obviously primary language is not your one and only thing for many of you. You teach all the subjects. So actually that's something to consider. And I say to consider, please don't go away thinking, oh, I have to look at all of my and I have to relate it to the national curriculum. If that document, if the product and resources, book, textbook, online learning platform that you use, that you've bought in, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But does it link to the national curriculum? Well, the providers may have already linked that for you. So actually you can say, yes, it's linked to the national curriculum document. Yes, you can see it here. Or actually, you know that. But it's just worth checking if you are thinking about investing in new resources and things like that, or checking what you've got. And if you're designing your own curriculum and resources, then just obviously remind yourself of those. You know, it's just dotting I's and crossing T's. They might also ask, you know, how do class teachers know what went before in previous years? Because obviously primary, it's not necessarily a follow through like within secondary, whereas you might have the same teacher across the entirety of Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 4, you have the same teacher hopefully for 2 years, or the same team of teachers. So obviously that's about communication then. So if you're a Year 5 teacher, it's good to have an idea of what happened in Year 4 and in Year 3 languages. And definitely if you're a classroom teacher and you're doing this and they come to see you, they might ask you that question. They actually might not, because it might be the subject lead or indeed SLT who they ask these questions to. And again, these are not exact, they're not exhaustive. You would definitely be asked this. And obviously there's what's pedagogy in languages, what are the strengths and areas for development within languages, and how is the curriculum coverage progressive throughout the school. So again, looking at Year 3, 4, 5, 6, and how does Year 4 build on what they've learned in Year 3, and even if it's a different language, the skills and that transferability and how they learned the language in Year 3, what can they then take away to help them with their language learning, even if it's a different language. And what schemes, if any, do you follow? They may ask to see those, they may not ask to see those. You know, it's, again, these aren't exhaustive. If they want to, it probably means that they're interested to see what you've got. It's not, again, necessarily a bad thing. So progress questions then. So these are the types of questions that could be asked. You know, how do you make sure that pupils who are stuck feel supported? A subject lead, do you know what's happening across the school? So if you are subject lead, what's happening, or subject lead across a cluster of schools or a network of schools, do you know what's happening? And actually what's happening in your school, is it happening in all those others? And if you say, well, yes, of course it is, because I'm a subject lead and we've created this scheme, okay, how do you know that? So again, where's the evidence, if you like? And what will they see, or what would the inspector expect to see and hear when they do go into language lessons, or when they do go to the other school, if they are indeed inspecting the group of schools? And they don't always do that, okay? They don't always do that. So there is no need to panic if you are a network lead or cluster lead. What's in place for, oh, sorry, spelling mistake there. What's in place for the pupils who are stuck, and how are end of unit and module assessments fed back into teaching and learning. So we're not just doing an assessment, or indeed actually question, are we doing assessments in languages? We don't want to over-assess our kids, but equally, you know, we need to be able to demonstrate progress and actually track and that information. And how do we fill gaps in languages and decide on interventions? Now, these questions I will correct, but I will send these to you. You will have these just as inspiration or consideration. So intervention questions here: how are learning gaps filled? Are staff conducting interventions subject specialist, or are they support staff? And I mean that with the greatest respect, and I'm sure that they do too. But these are the types of things. So if subject interventions are happening, who's doing them? Why is that person doing them? Why aren't you doing them? And obviously you're the teacher, you're delivering, etc. So that could be the reasons why. So again, that what are you doing to support the students who are struggling, or who weren't here in Year 3 or in previous years, etc. CPD questions, and this is quite poignant. We know that actually CPD for modern foreign languages across primary and secondary is not right up there. Often it's down to exams, and it's English and Maths CPD is much more highly prized by some and much more available. And languages is not always supported, which is why I'm so thrilled about today as well, I have to say. But equally, you know, what CPD provision have languages staff had? When did they have it? And again, this wouldn't necessarily be for you. It might be for curriculum leads, but it would definitely, I say definitely, nothing is exact. It would be a question asked to SLT. So if you're head teacher, deputy head teacher, assistant head teacher in a school, you could be asked this question about curriculum provision and CPD provision and how you support your teachers in doing that. And again, if you've got a new member of staff, whether they're it's not NQT, RQT, from September is ECT, so how are you supporting those ECTs, or teachers that are new to the school, how are you supporting those in the language requirements that you are expecting and delivery, and what training have you received if you're curriculum lead, and what support is there for a staff member who may be struggling. And obviously then we've got how to ensure that all teachers and TAs have required subject knowledge. So quite a lot there, really. Pupil premium questions, obviously there are other groups of learner type questions too. You know, how do we provide pupil premium pupils in languages? What provision are we putting there for them? Do they need anything extra or not? And obviously this is, you know, part of the whole school wraparound care package that you have for those learners. They may or may not be a focus. It depends. They may or may not do a deep dive in languages, but if they do, this could be one of the things they look at. Obviously knowing your students really well, making sure that your teacher, curriculum lead, SLT know what provision is in place for languages, for groups of learners, really important. And obviously your curriculum plan, intentional lessons, lesson resources, all obviously have to provide support, scaffold, stretch and challenge for every learner. And how do we improve pupils' cultural capital, and especially how do we ensure it in languages, because that is an expectation. And then what training and support have you received to best support these pupils, or have you not received any? And, you know, if you haven't received any, then you haven't. SEND questions, you know, how is these learners supported? Do we have a plan to ensure good progress? How do we know this is happening across the school? How do we assess and monitor it in languages, as in progression, and as well as the learner, and how do we know that there's progression throughout the school? And obviously your curriculum plan, you know, for 3 through to 6 will help demonstrate that. But obviously if you're being asked questions, and if you're the SEND lead for additional learning lead in your school, then these are questions that obviously may be asked directly to the SENCO. So workload and wellbeing questions as well, because any of the any deep dive does have the expectation that requirements will not be pushed down. The SLT are not pressuring and failing to support their teachers. And workload and wellbeing questions are quite a new thing, but I think this is a good thing. So these are questions as well that you could be asked if you're interviewed, talked to, maybe even as a teacher. You know, if you're a new teacher in the school, to the school, then what support have you received? You know, or if you're the curriculum lead for languages, how do you support that new teacher? You know, how do we ensure that they've got that they feel supported by you as a leader? Obviously, do you have do you feel you've been given all the tools you need to do the role? That's a question that could be asked of anybody. Quite an interesting question, obviously. So making sure that, again, that workload is not too much, that it's appropriate, but also that well-being is being taken care of as well, rather than just pushing things, and make sure that we've all got a huge list of things to do. We've all got a huge list of, you know, you guys in primary have got the full range of topics and the full range of learners within your classes. So actually making sure that you've had training and support to be able to deliver effectively and well and confidently. So again, these aren't an exhaustive list of questions, and I will send these to you so you've got them, and obviously correct the spelling mistake earlier. So a deep dive in languages then. So some questions to consider when they do come in, and colleagues have said, what would colleagues have been asked? And obviously none have happened in the last, prior to March last year, during this time. We've not had direction, or that actually they are going to come back out in September. They're going to come and visit schools and see what's happening. We don't know when they're going to come yet. I don't think actually they can say that yet, because obviously the climate is it's in flux, isn't it, really? I know you're all back in schools. I'm working extremely hard, but I know that they're not going to come this academic year. She says, hopefully, touching wood, because now I've said that, hopefully nobody will have a little knock on the door or a phone call to say, guess what? But yeah, so some of the questions then for languages, again, what would you expect the people to have learned by the end of next term? So if you have half-hour lessons or 2-hour lesson, 2 1-hour sessions across the week, what would pupils have learned by the end of next term? So again, it's like, okay, well, my plan says this, and so this is what I expect them to be able to do. And they will then be sort of thinking, well, okay, if you want me to do that, how is this lesson going to fit into that? And it doesn't have to be the same topic, but similar language, etc., sentence construction, use of connectives or opinion phrases and reasons in the language, for example, if you're expecting them to be proficient in that at the end of next term. How did you choose a specific activity that they've obviously seen in your lesson for the pupils now? And this is that point of saying, well, okay, this came before it, this is coming after it, this is where I want them to be, so I'm doing this lesson now because it fits into the picture. Think of it as a jigsaw, this piece of jigsaw puzzle. Why are you doing this activity right now? Where does it fit into that whole big picture, that overview of the curriculum, that implementation and intent? Why are you doing this activity? If it's listening, speaking, reading, writing, it may be something creative, but why they're doing it in languages now, what and how is this going to feed into the next bit? That's what they're interested in. And how do you support pupils who are not meeting expected standards? Obviously, we saw that earlier in the questions, but specifically languages. What do you intend to do in the next 5, next 2, next 10 lessons? It's not a test. You might say, well, this is the intention, this is where I want us to be. They're not expecting you to roll out a whole series of lesson plans to go, Dad, this is what I'm going to do. You can take it away over there and have a really good look. They're not expecting that, all right? But they are expecting you to know what's coming later, what came before it, what came later, okay? So again, a few questions here. How many lessons have preceded this specific teaching point, and what was covered in those lessons? What came before? And then how many lessons on this topic? So if you're doing, I don't know, if you're doing, let's stick with hobbies and opinions, pastimes, or daily routines, something like that, or time and daily routine, how many lessons on this have you planned? Whereabouts are you in that sequence of lessons? Where do you expect them to be at the end? Okay, so you're introducing time now, having done, daily routine, I get up, I get washed, I get dressed, etc. You're now adding times to that, okay, etc. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What came before it? What's going to come after it? Where does it fit into that, jigsaw puzzle? So there's 10 tips there for a deep dive. And I say this because, if it happens to you, and I don't know, please type in the chat if it has happened to you, if you have been through that process. I hope it wasn't dreadful. I hope it was supportive, because the ideas are that these are supportive now, and that they are kind and nice, and that actually people will be kind and considerate when they come into your classroom. Obviously, with the greatest respect, there's never any counting for personality on anyone. They are there to do a job, but they are here to not catch you out. They are to they're there to see if what you've said you're doing in languages, if you do have that deep dive, or when you have that deep dive. And there are lots of subjects within your school. They may choose RE and languages, they may choose maths and languages, they may not choose languages at all. And I know sometimes you'll get really disappointed when we've prepared and actually they don't come. Well, take it as a win is what I would say. Definitely take it as a win. It's just one of those things, and they just didn't need to come see you, or they didn't have time to come see you, probably because they were really engaged in someone else's lesson somewhere else in the school. So be calm, be prepared. Obviously, you don't have to create a massive folder with a massive document and lots of things, but be prepared and be calm. Try and be, your best self, your usual self. Try and be your usual self. You're not putting on a show. You're doing what you do every day, and they're just going to come in and see it. It's like when parents come in on like open days and open mornings and things like that. Try to view it like that. And it's a teeny weeny bit different, and the stakes are a little bit higher, but try to view it as that. Have your curriculum document ready to share. Make sure SLT know about it. Make sure you're prepared to be able to ask about it, or any of the teachers in your school. If you have more than one language teacher, are prepared to talk about it. They know it doesn't again have to be repeated verbatim. It's not a script, a piece of it's not a performance. It's do they know what they're teaching, why they're teaching it, why it's in that order? Because anybody could be asked, from the most experienced teacher, the lead languages person, through to the very new early career teacher. Ensure that you and your colleagues are prepared to meet and inspect, because it could happen, whether they come in your classroom or whether they're asked to see you in a meeting, not a formal meeting, a meeting because they're interested in the subject, they want to know more. Have your planning document and that term year overview to hand. Again, it doesn't have to be a massive folder, but just make sure you've got that to hand. And certainly if you are going into a meeting, I would take that with you. If you've already very prepared and your curriculum lead has done this, and actually the curriculum lead for languages isn't a member of SLT, then make sure that SLT have that, so they've already got it, so they're already looking at it, they're already aware of it, and then that you can just talk about it. But do take that in with you, because you're allowed to have prompts and things like that, and you can show them. They may not have brought that document out with them if they've observed a lesson, if this meeting is later in the day, etc. Be clear on what you're doing in lessons, what came before, what will come after. That is that sequencing. Be prepared to answer why you're teaching this particular thing now, that activity, this particular topic, on why pupils are learning it. Be prepared to talk about the support and scaffolding and stretch and challenge for specific pupils. So have any tracking documents to hand. It doesn't have to be onerous. It could be obviously on near a computer. And remember, they are not trying to trip you up. They're just making sure that what you've said you're going to do, that you're actually doing, and it's having the impact that you expect it to have. And if it's not having the impact that you're expecting to have, then what are you doing about it? And obvious, remember to smile, breathe, and drink and eat throughout the day, which is easier said than done, because more often than not, actually you're so busy, we're getting school earlier, we're staying school later because we want everything to be, we are perfectionists, we don't mean to be, but I think as teachers we tend to be, especially when someone's coming to see us, and we don't have to be. That's, I think, with the greatest respect, an unrealistic expectation for all of us. And yeah, I think I've talked a lot now, but I guess we should stop now, give everyone opportunity to go for a comfort break, refresh their cups of tea, etc. Yeah, that's great. Thank you everyone for coming back. That's great. And now obviously we're going to look at differentiation. And again, I'm going to kind of hopefully give you some ideas and things like that, not least because obviously differentiation is a word that kind of disappeared off the horizon for a long period of time, and sort of is making a bit of a comeback. I know obviously within primary, mastery has been the word, and obviously making sure that you take all those learners with you, and so they develop mastery in maths, in English, and also I guess modern foreign languages. But want to look at obviously differentiation, scaffolding, how we take them there. And I love this image of socks, and it's a bit like jeans really, and because actually we need it, because not everybody wears the same socks and the same type of jeans, and actually some of you might go, oh, socks, haven't worn socks for years. Crista, the sun's out where I am, I haven't worn socks for weeks. Well, lucky you. But yeah, the idea is obviously we have long socks, short socks, we have those trainer socks, some like no socks, but we take them all with us, don't we? All of our learners, they come in all shapes and sizes, some like over the knee socks, some like hockey socks, etc. And some people don't like them, but we're going to take them all with us. And yeah, so differentiation starts with knowing your learners really, really well, because if we don't know them, and this goes beyond the data, then actually we don't know how best to support them. And we know their names, we know the information from previous class teachers, but also what we get, we know the expectations of where they should be, but obviously we need to make sure we take them with us. And it begins with helping to understand that, they're welcomed and valued as unique individuals. So what the skills they have, the voice they have, and they may be absolute sweethearts, they may be little tinkers and everything in between, but actually they're welcomed and valued. Not always welcomed and valued when they're calling out, getting out of their chair, wandering around. They prefer to sit on the floor to do their languages rather than actually being with us, but actually they're welcomed and valued. And in true teacher style, we always have that smile on our faces, though obviously if people to look very close, we might have slightly gritted teeth as we're doing it, just because we are teachers doing our very, very best to do all of that. But obviously the teacher's confident of the learner's capacity to learn, what they need to learn, and and will support them vigorously, to get them there. The work they do together to enhance another one's growth. Both successes and failures are inevitable in learning, obviously, and the classroom is a safe place, so they can make mistakes, they feel they can make mistakes, and actually it's okay to not get everything perfect all of the time. And we know there are groups of learners who really, really struggle with that, but this is all part of differentiation, isn't it? And that we are changing our routines and processes in the classroom, and it's designed to give all students access, regardless of their need, and also whatever they need to do in order for success. We know that there's no one size fits all to this, and that actually in terms of exam situations, obviously we know from it's just the system isn't perfect, and the system isn't always seemingly fair as well, and that actually we everybody has to take these exams, so we need to do our best to get them there. But in order to get them there, obviously we need to differentiate it, and I think this image just says everything. It's an old image, but it's one that appears from time to time. It's one that I love and hate in equal measure, for various reasons. So differentiation is kind of diagnosing what your learners need. And one of the things, I was sort of looking into this a few years ago, and really sort of looking at what my learners needed, and how better I could help them. And I stumbled across this kind of quadrant really, about kind of, looking at what my learners need. Well, they need to learn this, they need to be able to, okay, and I sort of looked at it a little bit closer, and I thought, well, differentiation is not producing 30 different, or 35 if you've got a huge class, or maybe slightly less if you're lucky and you have less than 30, but it's not providing 30 different lesson plans, activities, coloured sheets, etc. It is looking at kind of how you can best support your learners, but it's really good to know them beyond that data, you know, whether they like languages or not. I said, you know, I got out of bed early and loved languages, loved teaching languages. I knew when I was 11 years old and I had my first languages lesson in secondary school that I wanted to be a languages teacher. I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Ran all the way home to tell my mum and dad that actually that's what I was going to do. And however many years later, I did it. And it's amazing. But not everybody sees it as that. So it's about, for me, it's a case of, well, okay, if I get them on board, I've got a good relationship with them as best as I possibly can do. Then actually I need to look at how best I can support my learners now, because they have to, you know, when I was teaching in secondary, they had to do this until the end of year 9. So every single learner had to do that, and actually I had to find a way to get them. So that's where I was with this. And I sort of looked at, as I said, I came across this quadrant and wanted to really look at kind of my students and diagnose them. And obviously there may well be even more quadrants than this, but I thought this was kind of revolutionary for me and groundbreaking at that time. So are they low content and high process, in that they can do the work and know what to do, but need support with the content, so the knowledge, the phrases, the language, the grammar, the vocabulary? Or are they low content and low process, so they struggle with the knowledge, they're not really sure what they're doing, and the content, you know, they're just not sure. And these could be obviously some reluctant learners, or they've not had a languages experience beforehand, or they just feel out of their depth. Or are they high content, low process, so they understand the content, they understand the language and can say it, and very, very good sort of knowledge, learning, understanding of that. But actually when it comes to the output, they kind of panic, and if you said to them, you know, I say essay writing here, you know, they certainly won't be doing that for you in primary. That's not an expectation of primary languages. But, you know, if you ask them to do a role play, for example, if you've given them a series of questions, or you've asked them to work in pairs, and you want some questions and some answers, you know, are they anxious about that? Do they need support with that? Because they're unsure of what to say. They're unsure of, you know, they're just not sure how to link what they've got in here to this task. And it's amazing, you know, you will see it in the classroom in other subject areas. You know, you give them a question to answer and they don't answer it. They go off and kind of talk about something else, and, you know, they don't necessarily do what you've asked them to do. So you just need to guide them a little bit. Or are they high content, high process, and can understand terminology, the language that you use, questions that you use? Are they aware of grammar, you know, spag, accents? Have they got, you know, pronunciation, grapheme, phoneme link, you know, and actually when they speak, write, it's just excellent. They do the work and get on with it. And actually, it's really interesting to do that with your class, I think, in terms of differentiation, because then you sort of work out where they are and how better to focus support and intervention. So differentiation is, obviously, there's a lot here, and Caroline Tomlinson talked about getting students from A to B. We don't cut down the curriculum content for them. Actually, we scaffold and support their learning journey. So what we've said in those curriculum documents, we've said, okay, in year 3, this is what we're going to cover. This is where they are at the beginning. This is where they're going to be at the end. You know, and this is the journey, the languages journey we're going to take them on. We don't slice off a chunk and say, do you know what, these learners can't manage with that. We scaffold our activities and have a range of activities that we take them there. So what we do in terms of differentiation is obviously designed to address needs. We ditch the one size fits all. You know, not everyone wears, I talked about socks, jeans. Some people wear skinny jeans. Some people wear flares. Some people don't wear jeans at all. Some people wear, you know, skirts. We you know, it's different sorts of clothing for different people, and the same, obviously, different types of activities for learners. We just need to make sure that actually we offer alternatives. And this is not about, I'm not telling you to go away and create lots of different things, but actually And I don't necessarily like to use the word exploit, but actually, if we are doing a topic and we have got a resource, how can we make sure that we don't just do this once, this activity? If it's a reading activity, are we going to read it aloud, or the teacher going to read it aloud, or the teaching assistant read it aloud, and actually going to, and then are they going to follow? And are they going to perhaps, I don't know, underline some of the words that they've that they recognise, things like that. They don't just have to do it for the reading comprehension's sake. They can do it from a listening perspective. They can practice saying the words. Can we do a game with it? And it's really kind of exploiting some of the activities that we've got. Like I say, it's not about creating lots of different tasks. It's just being very judicious in what we use, and then how then can we use that to do activities in the across the different skills. So speaking, listening, speaking, reading, writing. Can we do that? And certainly if you're in a situation where you're creating resources, you don't want to be in a situation where you're creating resources and spending so much time creating these resources and only using them once for 10 minutes if you're spending 2 hours on something or an hour on something. And when we're all NQTs and early career teachers, we're planning and we're really excited to do this and we want to spend ages. I had to, the school I went into didn't have much in the way of resources, didn't have flashcards. I'm a big lover of flashcards and using those visual images. So I spent ages drawing, colouring and doing all those things. It took hours, but I had them. I've still got them now, actually. I've still got them. So, it's something that I can use a lot. And I spent the time at the time creating those, but making sure that I get maximum use out of it, because time is finite. We don't have all the time in the world. So obviously differentiation is not kind of, tracking students or groups by ability and something extra on top of good teaching. It's just making sure that actually we know our learners really well. We know what they can do. We know what they struggle with. We know what they need to support. And actually that support is getting them there, really. So it's not a one size fits all, which some people say contradicts the mastery focus, but I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole kind of different conversation, I think. And sometimes some of our learners need a scenic route, they need a more creative route, they need more support, they need it breaking down into steps, really, don't they? Some like going fast, they're going to get from A to B quite fast, so they're kind of heading off on motorways because they are those high content, high output. They're really, they know their stuff, they're passionate, they're excited about it. But some of us, like to go the scenic route, like to go through the villages, the towns to get there. And actually we all get to the same destination, to the same point where we want to be. It's just how we get there. And that's differentiation for me. So differentiation in the classroom then can look like this. And some people say, differentiation by outcome. That's just not really differentiation. But it is actually, the outcome of what the students produce and what they can do, obviously in terms of resource, pace, grouping, role, support, questioning, the questions we ask them, the questions we give them, etc. To elicit language, obviously assessment and that tracking, not saying you have to test, but equally just making sure that the type of assessment that they do, is it different to others? Or do they all have to do the same test? Are they all having access to the test? And if you've got 5 or 10 questions on there, or do some learners have fewer questions? And the reason for that, obviously, because that they won't necessarily get there. There is, of course, a discussion that if you don't show them, they can't try and they might surprise you. But the fact is that, you differentiate by assessment too. The essential ingredients, if you like, of differentiation, there's 5 aspects here. I'm going to go through these. So obviously, to have an engaging learning environment where we're welcoming, we've got a welcoming classroom, which in primary everybody does. If you've got your own classrooms, they are incredible spaces of joy, colour, learning. There's workstations, there's so much there. There's displays, from floor to ceiling. They're just incredible places. The corridors are the same too, that just inspire and invoke curiosity and really hooks them in to learning, keeps them interested. It's a risk-free, respectful environment and really exciting and engaging to be in. This kind of, when they come there, they're like, what are we going to do now? What are we learning now? Because you're in a space where you teach lots of different subjects, or maybe actually if you're lead and you're their specialist and you teach languages across the school or cluster of schools, you come in and actually just deliver this. So you come into someone else's classroom. So see if you can have a little bit of space where you can have your, language learning display, so you can really engage and excite and enthuse and actually use it as a resource, as well as also a gallery, perhaps of students' work. So obviously a high quality inclusive curriculum, it's the map to the destination, the framework, it's your end point, and keywords, concepts, that's your curriculum. It's not 100-mile-an-hour drive pegged down the motorway. You take everyone with you. And if we're looking at teachers asking, therefore, know what students can do, what they can't do, because they know their learners really well. If we're talking about differentiation, where teachers don't move on before a concept is learned, again, it's that writing in the sand. Learning should be not writing in the sand. It needs to be learned today, recalled, remembered. So actually, can you remember where we've seen this word before? Can you recall it? Do you remember when we did this topic, etc.? And many of us do this naturally without even thinking about it, I think. So teachers ensure that building blocks are in place, so stepping stones aren't missed out. And this is more important, I think, as Ofsted have been quite clear, that they are looking to see how your curriculum is sequenced, what came before, what comes after, how you're taking them there. And I think that's important. If one step's missed out, then a jump across, or they haven't got a learning point, can't always be made. That gap is bigger. So actually it's quite nice that recall, interleaving are really critical here, to make sure that we take learners with us. Questioning and recall activities, interleaving. Remember when we learned this before, and I've said that. Can you tell me what this looks like or sounds like? You're linking to previous learning, so that actually students are feel included, feel like they can do it. It's not just right, okay, we're doing this today, and we're not linking it to prior learning, because that's again what Ofsted are expecting to see. So what they've learned previously, where has this helped them beforehand? And I have to say, my experience of teaching in primary and being in primary and being around primary teachers, you do this extremely well. I think colleagues perhaps in secondary might not do this as well, maybe. I don't want to do anyone a disservice, but I'm just saying. And then obviously responding to students' needs, we need to be responsive. We haven't got different expectations, and differentiation obviously used to be this 30 sheets of paper, lots of different activities. We need to have the highest of expectations of all of our learners, and we want to take them there. So if this is our endpoint, we've defined that's our endpoint at the end of year 5, then we need to take them with us, and the differentiation and scaffolding is the support and help we're going to need to get them there. So we preempt what the pitfalls might be, because we know our learners really well and we're responsive to their needs. I do think that actually when people say, oh, differentiation, we have to do it, I do think it's really responsive teaching. It's seeing what our learners can't do, and that thing of a lesson. And we've probably all done it. And if you're, I don't think any of you are, but if you're very old like me and actually been teaching for a long time, that cast your mind back to when you were an NQT and you planned your lessons, or even when you're training, you plan your lessons and you do these things, and this needs to go happen at 9:07, this is going to happen, and then at 9:13 this is going to happen, I'm going to do this activity. And I remember it was actually in an old Ofsted 5-day inspection. I had this class and they were just lovely, but they weren't getting it. They just weren't getting it. And I was like, I really have to stop this. I can't really go on and do this. So I just said, right, stop. Right, guys, come on. Put your hands up if you're struggling. Nobody. Put your hands up if you think you can do this. Everybody, oh yeah, miss, you know, because they knew there was an inspection in the room. They could obviously tell I was a bit nervous, and teachers were a little bit different. But actually it's a case of, right, let's stop. You know, we're learning this together. We need to make sure that you do this, because actually any future lesson is going to be disrupted by the fact that you haven't got this. And it was time and times of day, etc. That's what we were doing. That's what we were looking at. And it was just very interesting. And it's that reading the room, seeing what's happening in the classroom, and then just stopping and pausing, going, right, okay, hands up who's got that, hands up who's not. And of course, there are learners who aren't going to be like, oh no, I haven't got that. They might look down, they might look across, might look anywhere but you. But actually, it's just us knowing them really well and being responsive to their needs. So obviously you are the captain of your ship, and classroom management is key to this. You, as teachers, you set the tone, you make the weather for your lesson. If you're happy, hopefully they're happy. You know, if something's happened within the school community, if something's happened at break time, a falling out or something, you know, you've already established your routines. They know you create a safe, warm environment. You know, when learners coming in back from break, or, you know, you've played the music for lesson activity, subject changeover, whatever it may be, you are in charge. So when that music stops, there is the expectation that actually students aren't still getting out their language books, their language work, they are sat down ready learning, and actually just making sure that it's as risk-free and stress-free, if you like, as possible. If you're, and I'm sure you're not, because I've never met a grumpy primary school teacher in my 20 plus years, I have to say. If you're grumpy and smiling, sad, cross, you know, you're running late. And I know when I was a teacher who I gave my classroom to an NQT, I was then moving from classroom to classroom because I didn't want an NQT to not have a base and not have her routines kind of sorted, and then the kids being 4 different classrooms across the school fortnight. I didn't want that, one of which was in an ICT room. I definitely didn't want that. So that's really difficult to make sure you end a lesson on the bell and then you end up somewhere else in another part of the school. And if you're a teacher that comes in and provides language support for schools, that can be quite tricky as well. But if you're trying to smile, you know, try to be positive, because actually that positivity will emanate from you. And actually, if you're smiling, interested, they'll be seeing you smile. If you're not smiling so much, in a rush, trying to log on, trying to do all these different things, then it just creates a different mood perhaps in the classroom. And we know this if we're reflective practitioners and think back and we think about when we were in QT and early career teacher and training, and some of the positives and some of the things not so well. And I know it's really difficult to love all of your students, but actually that thing of extending unconditional positive regard, again, which I see incredibly more so in primary schools rather than secondary. So something may have happened before the break or in the previous subject, but actually we've drawn a line underneath that and we're moving on. So we're smiling, we're different, we've forgotten about that now. And that just helps you be the captain of your ship, I think, really. So elements of differentiation, obviously there's content, process, product, environment. I say 4 simple things, but 4 things. So we're looking at obviously differentiation of content now. We want high expectations for everybody, the same content for everybody. And the same endpoint for everybody. So if you've got a reading, if they're doing a reading task, if that's what you've planned within your languages input, then are we going to read it aloud? Is there a sound file? Is it dense text? Does it need to be broken up? Is there images? Can we dual code it? So can we make sure that actually there are we're taking everybody with us? You know, what are we? How are we doing that? Because we've got that same end point. Is it the same learning journey? Are we all going to do this activity and then they're just going to get it, or there are some others that won't? Because some will have different entry and different starting points. Some may have learned a language beforehand, some may not. If you're picking up, you know, a year 5 class and they've had Spanish for 2 years beforehand, you're now teaching Latin or you're now teaching German, then obviously different entry points. And if you've got two year 5 classes and one's had a continuation or one's had different languages throughout because of, teacher expertise as they've come in, then actually very different starting points. And then knowledge gaps. Are we thinking about knowledge gaps, potential knowledge gaps, and how are we countering those? So if we're looking at process now, we're talking now about, how the curriculum content is presented to the learners. What are we doing? Are we recalling previous learning? Are we setting this up? Are we playing music at the start? I've seen so many beautiful lessons where, okay, this is a theme that we're doing, there may be something exciting in a previous subject, we've moved on to languages time now, and actually listen to this piece of music, see what you can hear, this gives you a clue to what we're learning, and that just kind of warms them up, awakens their ears and senses, and it's a really lovely thing to do. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not trying to give you a load of work now where you go in and find music to support your languages content, your input, not that at all, but it's quite a nice thing to do. Is it dual coded? So the way the process for which you're doing it, is it just, again, dense text, or are there images as well? Is there images and small amounts of text? Can we break that down for learners too? Instead of that dense text with one image, can they, have we got strips? Are they pulling it and putting it? Can they cut it up themselves and move it to the order we want to? Can they underline? Can they write something or code it in a particular way? Can they, various different ways to do. Scaffolded, obviously, are we making sure that, oh yes, that's a different, we don't want learners to necessarily know they're doing different tasks, like, oh, if you sat on that table, that's a harder task. Oh, I'm sat on this table, that's an easier task. Or students over there going, oh, Miss, why are they doing that easier task? That's so much easier. I've got more text than this. And we just need to be mindful of that. If we do carousel activities, students always like to move around them, and actually you can build up their skills by taking them through the process of doing that. And obviously making sure that we've got enrichment and extension for those that are interested, for those that have additional learning needs, or want to stretch and challenge, making sure that we've got challenge tasks and something for them to do. And it may be a challenge task that is different. It may be a challenge task that is completely different topic, rather than just more work, because we don't want students to feel that actually they've completed all the work and their challenge or extension in enrichment is just more work. Lollipop sticks and things like that. There may be a help station. There may be something in their languages book, if you have a book, that actually they can pull out and do something like that. The product now. So this is the output. What do we want students to produce to demonstrate their learning? And one of the things I absolutely love, and this where some people say differentiation by outcome is always a bit, oh, it's not really differentiation. Well, I kind of love this. Show me what you know. And I always used to do this with very anxious learners when it was assessment time, even if it was low stakes, or when I'm talking secondary high stakes, show me what you know. This is an opportunity. I didn't use the word test, and learners aren't daft. They know what it's like, because we tend to be quiet, we tend to focus, we want our best work, but equally, show me what you know. It's just better than perhaps using the word test or assessment, exam. I know we don't have to protect learners from everything, but actually we can help support them by doing tasks that we say, show me what you know. So actually, in terms of assessment or output, doesn't have to be assessment, their piece of work to show their learning in, if we said earlier, hobbies or daily routine, they might want to write, have written output, and then produce a poem, a short paragraph of writing, their best sentence, a longer sentence than what they previously have was, say, 15 words. That's quite a lot for languages, but equally, what can they do? Can they link sentences together? Can they say from someone else's write it from someone else's perspective? Can they create a cartoon? So not only are they having the images, and if you've got online tools. You've got something like Canva, which is free, or there are other tools as well that you can use where actually they can drag and drop the images in. So they're not just spending all of their time drawing and creating, but actually then are still doing the language because they've dragged and dropped these elements in. Or you can provide them with blank template to draw and create. It's kind of up to you. Their best sentence, their best ever sentence, they're going to read this out to the class, etc. Or we're going to show it. Could be a rap, a short report, bullet points instead, headings, if they just want to put subtitles, headings like newspaper headings, etc., a story or diagram. Spoken, they could do, again, a song, a rap, puppetry, because obviously if they've done that for written work, then we want to really exploit this and get them to show us as best they can with the speaking the language too. Puppetry as well, every single supermarket, you can get inexpensive socks if you have a budget. You may not have a budget, you may ask parents to bring these things in, but obviously always have a few spares in case someone forgets or you can't. Make a sock puppet, and then they can do a little bit of puppetry. So instead of them speaking, it's actually the little puppet, and that's a wonderful thing. Write a news report, a drama, create some kind of drama, do a little performance. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more later. And running dictation, where they're outside, you put perhaps broken down words, the text, etc., and they need to students get that, run back to their group, and then kind of verbalize it to the group of what they've said, and they've got to check the spelling. It's quite a nice activity, but actually they create that activity and then break it up for class to do. But obviously with 35 learners in a primary classroom, might not want to do that. You might have already tried it, they might already love it. Listening, obviously, are they listening out for keywords, key phrases, something that you want them to, rather than just getting all the answers? Are they doing certain ones like there are eight questions here you're going to listen to. This group here, I want you to focus on answering 1, 3, 5, 7. This group here, I want you to focus on 2, 4, 6, 8. You over there, I want you to focus on just getting 4 answers. This group here, I want you to get 6 out of 8 minimum. And that's, differentiation, obviously through listening, just expectations, output. Matching definitions as well, are they might have something in front of them. Can they match definitions, pull that together? Tongue twisters, when they create their best sentence. If you're focusing on something like phonic sounds, if you're focusing on keywords, it's really nice if they do that, because then they can become tongue twisters, or you can teach them tongue twisters. Lots of tongue twisters out there across various languages that you can do. I've not looked. Well, actually, I say that if you're teaching Latin, Greek, one of the classics, I'm not sure if there probably are, rhyming words and things, but I haven't stumbled across any. There's quite a lot out there for many, many other languages, but not the classics as far as I know. And then obviously reading, we've got card sorts, we've got, here's the answer, what's the question? So here's the answer here, what do you think the question might be if you're focusing on question structures, etc. And noughts and crosses grid, you can always have that, and they have to identify it. And then obviously environment and space. So if we're talking about environment and space now for learners, we're thinking differentiation, where they sat. Have they got enough space? Is it the right space for them? Do they need to be somewhere else? When it's languages, do they need to be sat with a different group of learners? Do you have a seating plan? Why is your seating plan there? You don't. I guess it's down to preference, personal preference, and school policy. Is there an expectation that you'll have seating plans? I know I don't want to necessarily call it this, but the COVID classroom, we've had to have seating plans for bubbles, etc. But this is another form of differentiation. Partners, who they're working with, does it change depending on, what they're doing, what activity across the subjects you teach them, if you teach them everything, and you're with them all day, every day. Groupings, and obviously activities. So if you've got activity stations and things like that, differentiate across those. So I've got 10 quick ideas, and I say quick ideas, ideas to help with differentiation in languages. And obviously this concept of help stations, you may well have a situation in your classroom. I always had one. Even if I was a travelling teacher, if you like, and didn't have my own classroom, I'd have one of the many boxes, or in my box I'd have paper, book, pens, certainly for like secondary learners who don't have a pen, don't have their book, don't have, to actually just take that out of the way. So if you've got those kind of stations, you can have that for languages too. And rather than, so anything that you have got, if they need dictionaries, if they need additional support, if they missed something, then actually they can go to the help station to find what they need. The extension task, if you do something like lolly sticks, that can be there as well. So actually your help station is a languages help station, or has a languages element too. Your help station could contain catch-up tasks, read more, write more, create an interview, quiz or article for. It could be a title for each paragraph. If someone's been absent, what have they missed, and therefore your previous work, previous learning, any previous resources they can reflect upon. There could be flashcards there could be card sorts there could be quiz, or the opportunity to create a quiz, and a challenge, or indeed a support task as well. Some schools I know are using knowledge organisers, and therefore if you are, and I'm not saying that you should, I'm not saying that you shouldn't either, but if you do have those, then you can put those there as well. So there's always a few spares there for students to go and collect. And again, I know it's quite difficult for moving around in classrooms at the moment, but it could be quite a nice thing to do and to certainly have if you have that there. So if we're looking at sensory learning, then we break down the task, and obviously break down the task through, sight, hearing, smell, taste. So what can you see? That you might have a video, you might have images, etc. Without sound, what would, if you're just showing something visual, what's happening here, what could be happening here, and you're trying to kind of glean from them and sort of, that prediction. And this by showing them something visual rather than just giving them the text or just giving them the listening, because the listening could be overwhelming. But if they see what's happening, and actually students, regardless of age, sometimes are so distracted by the going on the screen that they're not listening to the language. Or actually you might just play the audio and focus on the hearing. So what can you hear? What do you think could be happening? What do you think you're going to see? And again, that's a level of differentiation. And it's also supporting that dual coding aspect. So you're presenting language, you're presenting vocabulary in two forms, or something that they're watching has visual and sound. It's just a nice thing to do, but breaking it down like that and creates that curiosity, intrigue, etc. If you have music, obviously that music scape at the start of the lesson, I've mentioned what do you think it could be about, but also obviously developing listening skills. What can you hear? What's being said? What do you think they're talking about? Are there any words that you can hear? That's quite a nice thing to do. Is there anything you recognise? And they might say a word, oh, I think I heard such and such, or they might not. In which case then, can you slow it down? Can you take out any background noise, etc. And obviously, what does it smell like, or what does it taste like? What does it and that's what's quite interesting if you're doing something to do with food. But yes, what does it feel like? What would I feel like delivering that? Then in terms of drama skills, you're looking at role play, acting, speaking aloud. How would I feel? Where am I position, etc. And obviously you've got there think, pair, share. So think and discuss and share with ideas. Obviously, you give students a question, a challenge, a task. Before you do this task, I want you to talk to your elbow buddy. I want you to go to talk to somebody else, try and get an answer, etc. It's nice because then they pair up and think and discuss and share ideas and their thoughts and learning with each other before they complete the task or before they respond to the rest of the class. So structure and scaffold, then there's lots of ideas here. Obviously you've got the fishbowl activity where you might have one group who and the rest of the class sit around and watch them, and they're doing the task, so they're doing a role play and they're showing other learners how to do it. So you're not only showing your expectations or sharing expectations, this is what I want it to look like, and then you can break it down even further and kind of say what was good about that, how could we make it even better, and prior to that, so you've modeled it for them. You're not just presenting the task and getting them to go away and do it. You've modeled, you or the other groups of learners, you and your TA perhaps even, have modeled it for the group before they go away and learn. Will do it for themselves. So you're picking key elements out. You're showing them what you'd like or what was good, what was not so great about it, and then they know what you're expecting. Obviously what I'm looking for, how would I do this? So if you're doing something, you might go, oh, and there's something, there's a Pixel group of schools, and they did something which was quite ingenious, actually, called walking talking mocks, and regardless of subject this can be used. And if they're doing and it's primarily for GCSE students, where they focused on breaking the exam situation down, so they take students to the hall and actually talk them through the paper. They're sort of, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I have to do, this is the time I've got, how am I going to break it down? Now obviously with year three learners, this is irrelevant for this context, but the relevance you can take out of it. So if you're saying, well, if I was doing this task, this is what I'd do, and show them what you would do, whether it's with a visualizer or whether show them and kind of show your thinking. And this is really powerful because, again, you're modeling it, you're saying aloud how you would complete the task, showing students your thinking, and so they can hear and watch you complete the task or the question. Or indeed, of course, you can build this together. Any of you want to share something, if you're creating a sentence, what words can we introduce, what can we share, what can we change it to make it more interesting, better. Obviously tapping into prior knowledge, ask learners where they've seen this before, where they might have seen it before, can they remember, give them thinking time because it's important for them to think, to try and recall. For some it takes longer than others. Give them time to talk with their elbow buddy, with people on their table. It's quite nice. Time it with an alarm at the end of it, because you do this every day across all of your subjects. Pre-teach the vocabulary as well. And if you're, I think most of us have a mobile phone, but if you've got a mobile phone, then there's no reason why you can't. You could pre-teach vocabulary, and for those learners that need that support, you can put it on the school website. Obviously, I know I saw some incredible work by a school I did some work with up in the northeast, and with their parents' help, some students produced some TikTok videos. So they used the app TikTok, obviously on their parents' phone. Parents videoed them doing some speaking, and it was just beautiful how they did that. And it was only a couple of sentences, but it was absolutely beautiful. You can use obviously that and collate those, so that any vocabulary that you're presenting that might be troublesome in the lesson, you've given to them for homework, they can learn it. It may be the sound file if you've recorded on your phone, and it's available on the school website. And obviously there's an accessibility issue there as well in terms of technology. Visual aids, obviously, graphic organisers, pictures, charts. Can you just, rather than give them dense text or just listening, can you give something to support them? That's dual coding. Using mnemonics as well to help them remember what are the key components of the sentence they have to use. If you're focusing on daily routine, it might be, obviously, you might want time and other aspects as well as your sentence. You want capital letter at the start, you want full stop at the end, but what in between? And also, if you're talking, say, for example, hobbies or food stuff, and you want opinions and reasons, there's a connective in there as well. So you've got connective, opinions, reasons, and time of day if you're talking about meal times and when you eat that food. And a range of questions, obviously, to make sure that you ask your student. You might want to ask them the same question, but you might want to just differentiate your questions too and have a range of questions. Also, we've got independence. We want to obviously develop learners so they're not miss, sir, I need some help all the time. And obviously focus on, obviously if we share in learner progress today, if they know where they are in languages, if they know what they can do, and actually have a realistic picture of what they can't do, what they need to be focusing on, then obviously what went well, even better if. Remember, now? What went well last time when you did some writing? So an even better if, so look back to your target, if whether it's on the wall, in a book, wherever it may be, remind them of those so they know, so they can put that hopefully into action. If you use 2 stars and wish, obviously my wish is that remember your wishes from last time. Please make sure that you are including, an opinion and a reason, because Crista, last time you only used opinion, it was really nice, but we had lots of short sentences, and I'd like you to build on that sentence and make it longer. So I want the fact that you like this, but I also want a reason, or maybe 2 reasons if you can do that, and I want that into a nice long sentence. I like the fact that I wonder if a good next step might be, if you don't like what went well, even better if, or 2 stars and a wish, or certainly encourage learners when they're feeding back to someone, find something that they like. I wonder if it would be good if you did this or included this next time. And then a good next step might be to go back and check, I don't know, accuracy. You missed out a word, you've missed out opinion, Crista, and that was a wish. So that's quite nice, but it's the same, isn't it? And then 3 before me. So rather than going, sir, miss, I need some help, they were encouraging them to be independent by them approaching 3 people before me. So whether that's they've thought about it, rather than just going, can't do it. And I know it's practice and routine, and sometimes they do it well and sometimes they just don't. But it's that, okay, encourage them to think about it. Can they look in their books, paper? Is there a display? Can they go to the help station? Can they ask a buddy? So brain buddy, book boss. Some people call it, like you being the boss, of course, you being the commander-in-chief of your classroom. And obviously that help station that we've already mentioned. Pace, are you allocating a different amount of time for different students in order to complete tasks? And that's quite important. If we just give 15 minutes or 5 minutes for everyone to do that, if we have 2 minutes thinking time or 1 minute thinking time, what are we doing? That's okay to have the whole class 2 minutes thinking time, but in terms of task completion, do some learners need more time to do it? And differentiation by pace, by timing is really valid. And if you do lots of carousel activities, obviously it's quite difficult to do that, but factoring into that, if they've done something creative, moving around the room, tidying up so the base is good or right for the next person, etc., all needs to be factored in. So you don't have groups waiting for other groups while they're still tidying up, which was something I learned very quickly when I did some primary work. Target your TA if you are blessed with a TA, and probably the TA that you can see on the screen right now is not a blessing considered to every single person's classroom, but you can target your TA if you do have, and I say a blessing because they're worth their weight in gold, they're incredible, people to come and help you with your learners, target their support, and that level of differentiation as well by targeting support. I know some TAs have to work with students, they're already there, but it may well be that actually within your subject area, they don't need the same level of support. I say in your subject area, within languages, they don't need the same level of support. I know a school I did some work with in secondary, they had a student who wrote sort of about this big when they first came to secondary school, and would just write almost like this with their fist, and had to be taught how their fine motor skills, using a pen, holding a pen, writing. But when it came to the languages classroom, the teacher was amazed. There was no support needed, because in other subjects it was very anxiety inducing, the tiny squares in maths books, etc. But this student in the languages classroom just came alive, and actually that TA felt like a waste of time. And actually the student was Turkish was their first language. They'd travelled through, I don't think they were from necessarily a refugee family, but they travelled through various countries, through various education systems, and actually in terms of languages were really on it. So they didn't need that support. So that TA support can be targeted elsewhere. I know you're not necessarily meant to, but if that person is in a situation on their educational healthcare plan where they have somebody with them, but necessarily not required, you might be able to focus this elsewhere, their support elsewhere. And then obviously, if you really need to work and focus with a group of learners, then obviously the TA could teach an aspect if they're confident and you're happy with them teaching and you've discussed it beforehand, they know the plan, they know what they're doing, then actually they can be teaching while you really focus in. And again, differentiation, things that we do in the classroom that we don't consider differentiation because it kind of fell out of fashion. So output now, we've got, obviously, we've talked about writing, speaking. Reticent pupils always don't always like speaking aloud. So when you do encourage them to do speaking, you might have a fancy dress box, or you might have done sock puppets. And when I was teaching, I did this, and I loved doing this every single year with students. And one of the things we did was to create videos. These were year 7 learners, and create videos that we sent then to our primary school that our language ambassadors would go to, and actually creating videos just of them speaking, just to support language teachers there. It was a lovely, lovely thing to do. But not every learner wants to speak in front of the class. Some do, and they will love it and love that performance, but some don't. So sock puppets, drama, dressing up kits, brilliant, because then you can really either, if you're using drama for speaking activities, then you can go to a different space perhaps. If you've got a quadrant outside your classroom, if you've got the school hall, taking them outside can be fraught with bees and insects and the like, and plus sun, obviously, rain, weather. But yeah, it's quite a nice thing to do. If we're using drama, then we're also looking at developing oracy as well. So in terms of output, we can develop this into a piece of drama rather than just a speaking. There's some, we go to a different space, we're developing oracy, voice projection, the bonus of speaking languages, and learners don't always realise it. Same with if you put a hat on, dress up box, etc., etc. And I know in the COVID classroom, with all of those restrictions, it's quite difficult to share things like that. But for the future, develop role plays. Again, this was rather than just develop sentences, short, sentences. Get them to think about questions they could use to entice information out of the person that they're speaking with, to really increase confidence and spontaneity and fluency, and also develop their good understanding, use, knowledge of transactional conversations as well. Drama obviously can be synonymous with languages and set up like, with instructions, clear instructions, modelling, etc., clear rule explanations, and drama activities like phonic sounds. So we sit in a circle, there's maybe 6 or 7 in circles, and then we have different circles across the room. So we give one person a sound, and we practice saying that sound. So if we're focusing on phonics, we could say the wa sound or the unt sound, whatever is your focus or whatever you need them to be able to do. And it's quite nice then to give one person a card or a sound with the sound on, and they've got to repeat it and practice saying it. And it's nice games, a nice drama activity to do that. You could do that with vocabulary recall and also grammar as well. The word, you could also diversify that a bit. So the word is mind, and pupils have to guess the word. So one of the words then has to be recalled kind of 6 or 7 times. It's a really nice thing to do. There's buzzy beads, which is a drama activity you might already do already. You need a large space for it, and pupils kind of buzz around the hall. And then when you, ring a bell, say stop, whatever word it might be, they make a statue and they choose a letter with their body, with their hands, with their, and actually it's based on a word, and the teacher or student has to guess it. And if you get out, then the student helps you choose the others and get the others out if you like. We can have starter sentences as well, where we give students the first 2 sentences in a role play, and they give them thinking time. They've got to add to it, so they create their scene themselves and then perform it to us. Quite nice. Shopping list activity for, again, a little bit of drama in your classroom. So in circles, we say one word. So I might say, baguette, and somebody the next person has to say something to add to it. So we might say, je vais au supermarché et je voudrais une baguette. And then somebody says, je vais au supermarché et je voudrais une baguette et du fromage, etc. So, and that's just a really nice drama activity game that you can do in circles around the class. Obviously, you can go, je suis allée au marché et j'ai acheté des oranges, or 1 kilo des oranges. It depends what you're learning and actually what you're doing. Obviously, going to cafe, I went to the beach. I went to the park and I played, etc., etc. You can choose the structures, and it's just recalling vocabulary or opinion phrases, etc. And it's really nice because there's repetition and everyone's thinking, and they can't always repeat what's already been said. So that's really nice. Obviously, there's poetry there, there's storyboarding, there's comics and graphic novels, and some kind of free, give them a free choice of what they want to do, how they want to present their output to you, because it's their opportunity to show you what they know. In terms of content, obviously we've got carousel, think about images and what images you've got. Are there any images? Do you need images? What could this be telling us? What's the language that goes with that? Obviously we could have videos, music, discovery, go find a source, here are some sources, etc. And then we've got different goals for different students, obviously, because we're talking about differentiation. So we want to make sure that our learners have different outcomes, well, same outcomes, if you like, but different goals to get them there. Now, if you say, oh, but Crista, we've said they all have the same goal. Well, they do, but actually we've got those students with stretch and challenge. We've got to make sure that actually their learning journey to date, some might be better at speaking, some might be reticent speakers, some might be better at writing, some might not be, and that's where the different outcomes can really work, and obviously therefore having different goals. And it's about knowing your learners really well and communicating that with them so they can develop the skill that they need to as part of their learning journey in languages. Now, again, I've talked quite a lot on differentiation, and I've, for about an hour. So I think it's probably either time for a break, perhaps again, and a time for us to stop maybe if we want to break and have a discussion about some of the things that I've mentioned.
Thank you. I obviously we want to give you enough time, Crista, to do your last section, in terms of the resources that we can use. But I'm really conscious that colleagues, you've not had an opportunity to talk to each other or share your ideas or questions or where you're at in terms of what Crista's been talking to. So shall I split you into just 2 breakout rooms so it just slims the numbers down slightly, and then perhaps Crista can go into one, I can go into another, and then we can have a bit of a conversation about what you've gained so far, how that fits into what you're doing at the moment, anything particular that you want to bring back as questions for Crista. If we look to do that for about 10 minutes, and obviously if we're done before then, we can all come back and we can make a start on the next section, but that will give you half an hour then, Crista, to focus on.
That's absolutely fine.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Lovely, that's brilliant. Right then, so I will split us into 2 breakout rooms.
Well, this final section, I have to say, we can make it as long or short, but this final section I've pulled together, and there's a lot on there. And I know you're probably going, oh no, there's even more. But Hannah tasked me with this, and I didn't want to say, oh, and if you'd like to buy my resource at the end of it, I know. So I found some free things that you can use. You can consider about things you might already know, things you might have tried, not know about. And I just thought that would be a nice thing after looking at raising the profile of languages first. But have we got any questions as a result of what came out of your chat room?
A couple of colleagues shared their approach and what they were doing. But one sort of issue or concern for some was around how you go about developing teacher subject knowledge. As the curriculum lead, obviously you've often got some background in terms of that, but building confidence and subject knowledge for other teachers that are teaching. And a colleague talked about how they'd made a really productive link with their secondary school, and the secondary school was coming in and supporting in terms of teacher subject knowledge development and supporting in terms of looking at that progression through and where they were hoping children will be when they leave primary and moving to secondary. So I felt that was a really good way forward in terms of forging those links, but didn't know whether you had any other ideas in terms of teacher subject knowledge.
I would say, well, I mean, obviously there are always upskilling courses, but then that costs money, and actually it's, there's only a finite amount of money, and is languages a priority? If you need it, then you can certainly ask for it and put it out there. But again, connect not only with other colleagues in secondary, but also primary. What's the school down the road? There may be your competitors. What are colleagues doing? Obviously there's social media. There's loads of amazing people on social media, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, and lots of brilliant Facebook groups. And one of the groups I'm actually going to mention is the languages in primary languages in primary schools group, LIPS, they're called, or LIPSes. You may well have seen them. They always post pictures of themselves with lips on the front. They're very proud, amazing, incredible, inspiring language teachers. And there's various websites and things that some of them work on, some of which I'm going to share actually in this next session when we look at resources and things. So yes, obviously in terms of teacher subject knowledge, it's not like, because when you look at online courses as well, they're not always brilliant, because it's like holiday, speaking French, German, Spanish, Japanese for holiday, and not always appropriate. So I would say connecting with other schools, connecting with those teachers, see what's out there. Look at something like Future Learn. They do language learning courses, but again, it's beginners. But it might help. Well, I say beginners, there's different levels. Depending on when you book into that, it's free for about a 3-week period. You don't have to pay for it. You can then subscribe for about £200 a year and then have free access to all their courses. But if you haven't got that funding, then you don't have to, you can do it free. And there was a really brilliant primary languages programme that University of Reading, I think Bernadette Holmes, University of Southampton, that recently constructed the Ripple report. And as a result of that Ripple report, which was research into primary languages, they created then a course. And it's fantastic, not only for primary teachers, but also for secondary teachers to have a better understanding of the amazing work that can be happening, probably is, in languages in primary school. So yeah, there are those things, but I'll think about that some more, do a bit more research, and then obviously come back. But yeah, another challenge. See, you just like throwing challenges at me, don't you? That's fine. Anyway, we should probably crack on with the final bit. And obviously, I'm acutely aware that 12 o'clock is when we are finishing. So I will best get on. So raising the profile of languages in school. And this is really hard to do. It is hard to do. But there's some ideas. I thought about this, and I thought about whether primary, secondary, what we can do to just raise a profile of it, and also whether enrich and engage parents, visitors to the school about what's happening, the work of that's happening within languages, and really kind of celebrate it, because it's something that is sometimes, not always, a poor relation. It's something that and again, not always, drops. It's not the first thing to drop necessarily, but it's something, if we're honest about it, it might be something that actually we hadn't really thought about. But if you were to walk through your school as having never been in there before, and what do you see first? What are what's visible when people first come in? There's obviously reception, there's chairs, but what else is there? Trophy cabinet. Is there anything for languages in there? Where is languages visible in your school? Is there a display board? Are there display boards? Are there flags? What's there? So how are you, if you're talking about raising the profile, then be visible. You have to be visible. We have to make it visible. And you might kind of have to crowbar, and this does require some additional effort and additional work. But if you've got a team of people in your school, or a team of teachers, you can perhaps share the workload. If you work across a cluster of schools, you could come up with a strategy. People could work on different things. So is there a bulletin, a newsletter, a celebration board at the front of school? Is anything languages on it? Or where is the languages celebration board? Is it around the back of somewhere? Is it near the, somewhere where parents would not go, in which case the students can see it. Wonderful if they see their wonderful work there, their wow work, but actually parents aren't seeing it, so that profile's not being raised with parents and visitors to the school. Is there a newsletter, school newsletter, or area of the school website? Does languages feature? Where does languages feature? I know in primary school newsletters are incredible. You have to write something, what you've done across the term. But if you're a class teacher who teaches all, the full range of subjects, are you covering languages as well? Is it a sentence? How, when you compare it against others, it doesn't have to be scientific research that you're doing, but what are you putting in there about languages? And if your languages content is across a 2-week block in June, then actually, what's the burst and celebration like then? Is it all languages? But for the rest of the year, what's the other focus? Are we gearing people up, getting people excited, celebrating what happened the year beforehand, etc.? What are we doing? Social media accounts, whether you've got them, or does the school have them? Do you have one for languages? Is it being shared, work being shared anonymously, what you're doing being anonymized, or, you can edit children's faces out if the policies in your school to not publish photos of children, and obviously parents request as well, what are their requests? And you can, do that, doing languages work, doing languages things, whether it's telling jokes, saying their best sentence, doing a bit of drama, like some of the differentiated activities that we're doing. Language projects as well, obviously things like mother tongue, other tongue. Are we doing there's competition mother tongue as well, where students are encouraged to write a piece of poetry or a childhood song or something like that in their home language. Or it could be the language that they're learning with you. Do you do competitions like that? Again, the focus is on languages. You're changing it from, no disrespect, but to STEM or the arts or something, and actually just moving it across to languages for a period of time that you're doing it. Sing it loud, sing it proud, make sure languages is up there. Obviously there's Jane Driver and some other people, and Roots into Languages East. So over Peterborough Way, they worked at creating a national spelling bee for primary languages, which is lovely, really lovely competition you can get involved with. I think this year, for the first year, they've actually had to charge for that. So it is amazing. You might want to look at the validity of that for your school. And I think everything else is free that I'm going to talk about, but that unfortunately now has a cost factor because obviously their funding structure has been cut off for all the reasons that we know. International School Award as well. Do you know about that? The British Council do an amazing International School Award. It's not just about languages. So if you're also the languages and geography lead, you can look at they provide a criteria and you work towards this. And actually, it's just raising the profile of internationalism, multilingualism across the school. You might do projects, you might link with another school. And even though the British Council's gone through some changes recently, there's, I think, 3 levels of International School Award now, where actually you can work as a school for one, and it's about the whole school focusing on this. It's really lovely. For each award you can level, you get a certificate that can be, I think, for the highest level, there's like a flag. If you've got a school flagpole, I never went to a school where there was a flagpole, so it could be there, or it could be something that you display at the front of school. International School Award and the work towards it, and that's really cohesive and brings everyone together, all subjects. It's brilliant. That shouldn't be done necessarily by the languages team and the languages department. And if it's happening in your school and languages aren't included, then you can not elbow your way in, but kind of go, well, we want a languages aspect to this as well, because it's international and this is what we want to promote, this is what we do. Obviously, certificates, rewards and celebrations, they don't have to be physical. They can be digital as well, and obviously who doesn't love a sparkly sticker? People do. If you've already got those, you can find some language ones. Obviously there's a cost factor to that too, but digital certificates you can create on something like Canva. You can actually record a little bit of sound over it. You could do it in PowerPoint if you wanted to and just send it home. You're emailing that and communicating that home. They've got a digital certificate in languages because of their incredible work, and it's just a celebration. It's just a call, a bit like the phone calls and things that we do. It goes beyond, it's in addition to parents' evening, but it's just quite nice, and again changes the focus from other subjects 2 languages, and also it's something really positive. If parents get an email home from the school, some open them like, it's like the phone call and say, oh, hello, is it the right time to speak now? Can I talk to you? And they're like, oh, no, not really, I'm really busy. And you're like, no, it's a good thing. So-and-so did some amazing work in languages. This is what we've done. And, you know, or, you know, they had to bring the props in. Well, this is what those, and here's a picture. And it's just quite a nice thing to do. And again, changes focus. So obviously you could have, you know, languages, first languages, and we've said about mother tongue, you could have a display. You know, this is a languages ambassadors display. So these are the language superstars. This is, you know, their heritage, their home language. This is where or perhaps where they've traveled to, etc. And just having something like that. And, you know, it doesn't cost any money unless you have to give them a badge. But it's something that you can do within school if you want a whole school, you know, from year 3 to year 6, if you want to just focus on those years, look at developing that languages ambassador kind of scheme where learners, you know, are proud of languages, talk about their languages, they have an interest. It could be an extra club, it could be a lunchtime thing, but something, or if they've been really incredible, you reward them or you encourage them to become language learners. It's kind of up to you how you set it up. Instead of language ambassadors, you could have language excellence or something like that. It, you know, it depends what you want, but consider something like that, because again, it's free. You can have a beautiful display that's permanent, that you just change you know, annually rather than termly, etc. Obviously, get real, linking for learners to use language in real settings. There's the Connecting Classrooms project now, obviously with Brexit happening, e-twinning, if you're part of an e-twinning project, you'll already know that you were shot out of that in January, but Connecting Classrooms is continuing. And actually, I think there's funding that is available for projects and things like that. Again, it's free, it's from the British Council, but funding available for projects and groups, and they are linked with international schools anywhere. So a colleague and friend actually just connected with a school in Nigeria, you know, to do an environmental project. They're also going to look at language too, but you can specify and you can, what do you want to do your project on, and people kind of come and engage with you with that. It's brilliant. It's free. It's through the British Council. It's robust. It's secure. And then if you've got Skype and things like that, then you can do that with learners. They could do pen friend letters or emails, etc. It's a really lovely way to just connect them. They have real value, real purpose for using and learning that language or finding out about that. And it just adds, if you're looking at geography, if you're looking at ecology, ecosystems, then actually it adds another element too, a very real element. The Institut Français, I've got a French pop video competition, which is open every year. It's just finished for this year, but there will be one next year. The Institut Français, I'm going to show you a little bit more about too. There was a poésie competition too, which was a poetry recital in French, German and Spanish. It was free to join. I think there were prizes and awards and things. The teacher that set it up works in a private school, lovely chap. I was one of the adjudicators, the most incredible work of students just reciting poems. So it's that sound spelling link and then speaking just for real purpose. It was lovely. And watching the students' videos, which were securely downloaded, I accessed it through Wakelet, and it's just wonderful. And really meaningful. The students really enjoyed it, and not every student had to do it. It was extracurricular, I guess, for some of them if they wanted to. Eurovision opportunity. I know we had poor James, whatever he was called, got nul point, which was just tragic. But you know, it's a really nice opportunity to explore and go through, you know, languages, countries, geographies, all these kind of things. Really lovely. If you like that, if you don't like that, then you don't have to do it. But there's some really lovely things. Obviously, age appropriacy of music and videos and things as well. Obviously, something to have in mind, you know, for safeguarding. European Day of Languages is in September the 26th. Could be a weekday. I don't know if it's a weekday or weekend this year, but yeah. And then any sort of festival of languages and things like that you can do just raises the profile, celebration, we're shining a spotlight on, and obviously communicate that with home, bulletin boards, newsletters, website, etc. Now, this is a photograph, I didn't take it, of a school in Bristol, and it's a multicultural school in Bristol, and the range of nationalities is, well, they have a flag for every nationality of all the different students that they have, their cohort. And when you walk into the school, you walk in, and this is like an area, and obviously the school's got multiple layers. I did say secondary school, not primary. And they have created this incredible space where, rather than it just be white walls, they've put all their flags there. They've got, historical, I think the history and art departments kind of work together. And obviously they've got maps, and there's symbolism there to go with that. And it's just beautiful. So any parent, any visitor to the school knows automatically that their school is a multicultural school. They value languages, and they value home languages, because these are the countries and the national flags of their student body, and that changes every year. They add to it. When students leave, they take some away, and then or try and find some space for them. It's incredible. It obviously is, I say, quite expensive to do, to get a flag, but that's something that they do, and it's just something that they do, and I just think it's wonderful. You could do a Who We Are project, looking at nationalities, home languages, community languages, valuing them both, because we can't just say that actually we value languages and really want to promote and raise profile of languages if we don't acknowledge there are home languages and we value those. And I think often when students are withdrawn, to focus on English perhaps first, because they're they don't speak it to the proficiency that they need to access things within classrooms, learning, instructions, textbooks, etc. It's a sort of missed opportunity here, because we're almost saying we don't value that language. We need you to use this because this is the operating language, but do make sure that we do that. And you could do that through, what makes us up, who are our grandparents, what do we eat, what do we like, where does that come from, and do a little bit of exploration around that. And that's really nice. You can get a template of like a stick man, and they can fill it with flags and fill it with words and items, and it's really powerful and really beautiful to see that, because actually we're not all the St. George's flag, regardless of what some of us may think or want, whatever. Actually, we are made up of lots of different things. We like lots of different things, and it's breaking down the barriers and promoting tolerance, and actually kind of saying, oh yeah, okay, great. Pupil voice, of course. What are they saying about languages? Do we ask them? Do we not ask them? If you don't ask them, then you won't know. But when Ofsted asks them, if they do a deep dive in your territory, they will know. So it's quite nice to know beforehand. Have they got any ideas? What do they like? Are you if they say, oh, well, I really like what we do in geography, I really like what we do here, can we do something like that, but in languages? And actually, we're so busy sometimes doing the day job on the treadmill that we don't always realise that and stop and think. And obviously, we don't have to take on board what they say. I'd like to read more books. I'd like to go outside. I'd like to go on the computer more, find the pedagogy, reason for the pedagogic reason behind it, learning behind it, and then you might be able to introduce it, you might not. So free resources then, and again, I will share these slides, and they're all hyperlinked, so they're linked to the sites and the resources. So free resources, I've got some here for French, German, Spanish, Latin, and Greek, just as an overview, and others. So the Institut Français, if you don't know already, they do a free French teacher day, okay, and there's training, and actually, in association with the Association for Language Learning, who I'm their development officer, there is a free training day on Saturday. They do webinars weekly, but it's a free training day on Saturday with a teach meet and various things, various speakers. And there's Benoit Le Deveillic, who is the lead at the Institut Français this weekend. You can sign up for free, you don't have to, it's a Saturday. There may well be recordings of aspects of that, but seek that out because it could be there to help you. They don't always have a primary focus, but they are encouraged to have primary and secondary elements to that on their French Teach Day. So that's worth checking out. The primary French project, if you look online, has some positives and negatives. It's quite old now. They've got colours of the flag, so blue, white and red scheme, and there's resources and presentations. I would advise it needs to be supplemented, but it's freely downloadable from their Culture Tech. The only thing you need to do is to set up an account, and it's a free account. They don't bombard you with emails, but if you tick what you like, they kind of email you every so often. And if you want to contact them about anything primary French, then obviously I'll send that, there's the email address there, but I'm sending these slides so you don't have to write it down. Association for Language Learning, then they have a primary zone. It's free. Obviously, it's for members. There are some things behind a paywall, but the primary zone is free. There's advice resources, not resources like you can take away and use, but suggestions for resources, reviews of resources, etc. There's a research and practice zone. There's a CLIL zone, which is, for example, content, language and integrated learning. So basically teaching geography through the medium of French, German, Spanish, science through the medium of, and it's really great, really fun way to do things. And there's in the research and practice area, there's videos and various things there. And the association, well, ALL and ASCL, which is the Association for School and College Leaders, we worked collaboratively a few years ago, and there's transition toolkits for French, German and Spanish for you to download, which are editable for you to use, so actually you can collate that information, pass it on to secondary schools. It's quite a nice thing for them to be aware of languages and what the amazing work that's happening in languages in your school, so they don't just start from scratch. So if you're interested in German, there's the Goethe Institute. Their German Teacher Day is the 3rd of July and it's free. They have got a wonderful speaker, have had the pleasure of meeting. He's incredible to listen to. He's talking about motivation. He teaches in an international school and teaches the sort of international schools curriculum. He's a really great guy. Might be for you, might not be for you, but check it out. It's free. It will be recorded, but they don't share their recordings like the Association for Language Learning do. They've got an amazing German collection for children, which is linked, and you've got Felix and Franzi, which are 2 little puppets. There's a duck and a duck and a bird, I want to say. No, it's a duck and something else. Duck and a frog, and you go through adventures. It's beautiful scheme for years 3 and 4. And Carla and Kai, they are insects that travel around, which is a bit grim if you don't like insects, but good. There's the Language Magician game, which is brilliant, free to sign up. Award-winning, just incredible. An Erasmus Plus funded project a few years ago. Absolutely brilliant. There's obviously books that you can use that are digital and loanable. There's promotional items which obviously have a cost factor, and again, email address is there. You can also borrow fairy tales and German in primary schools. It's like posters and things like that you can ask them, they'll send you them for free. There's German in nursery and EYFS, which is quite cute, quite nice. And there's also a section on cultures and traditions. Probably needs a bit of updating, but it's all right. The Consejería de Educación, lovely. Spanish teacher training they are doing on the 26th of June, which is a bit tight from where we are now. They have a Tecla quarterly magazine, and they have teachers' books and resources. I have to say, out of the three lots of these are cultural, these are the embassies. I would say these are probably my least favourite. In my opinion, but that could be because Spanish isn't my forte. I love French, I love German, but I think these would need to be supplemented. But take a look for yourself, think about your setting, what you're doing. They've got stories there, and they've got songs as well, which I think are free. The German actual DVD, because there are songs there you have to pay for. They give you the song booklet for free, but you have to pay for the song access to the songs, which is a bit of a shame. But as somebody, I think it was Caroline, said in our breakout room, there's loads of songs available on YouTube online. But it's about appropriacy as well. And there's a really nice unit called The World Learns Spanish, which obviously promoting that, so that's great. Free resources, there's Lightbulb Languages, I've said NSELP, there's, but for NSELP, the National Centres for Excellence in Language Pedagogy, they've only got a grammar knowledge and resources in French, German and Spanish. It doesn't look great to look at, but it's there as a guide and support. They've also got something on phonics and transition to. Rachel Hawkes is amazing and wonderful. She's got lots on her website. Susie Buell is Polyglot Languages. She does a cultural calendar. and Lightbulb Languages, who's an incredible, it's Claire Seckham on Twitter, or Valasecco, she's amazing. On her website, it's a collation and real celebration of primary languages work. There's schemes, there's a whole section on primary, there's French, German, Spanish, Latin, and Italian. Then the British Council have got a primary languages starter pack, bit old, bit out of date, could use it. They do lovely New Year packs for Chinese New Year. So this year there's Year of the Ox. I know it's a bit later, but cultural development, the support for language, they support languages hugely, and there is support. You can contact them for, and obviously connecting classrooms. There's Elapse, and I was involved in this project. It was brilliant. 21 projects. Again, it's CLIL. This Elapse project was embedding languages across primary and secondary education. And there's 20 lesson plans in French, German, 21 French, German, Spanish, and English. If you're teaching English as an additional language, in various things like technology, etc., geography, maths, music, arts, just loads. Have a look at our website when I send this. Latin and Greek, we've got the Iris Project, Classics for All, a lovely, beautiful mini-moose scheme of work with resources and workbook. It's quite difficult to find, but I've tracked it down for you. And there's Greek, if you fancy Greek, or if you know Greek, if you learned it yourself at university or at school. Then obviously Classics for All, and there's Maximum Classics as well. And they've got 10 modules that are fully resourced. And I was going to say, so I planned a 10-minute challenge, and I'd plan to say, why are we doing this? And because we're shaping learners of all kinds, and what's your takeaway? But I've just seen it's 12:01, so I'm going to stop talking. and yeah, I hope that was helpful. I hope it was useful. I hope you found it, engaging, hopefully not too overwhelming, but you've got lots of food for thought. But the resources, the questions, the deep dive questions, and the differentiation, I will send that across to Helen, so you'll have all of that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Crista. Honestly, you've crammed so much of my huge ask into, well, not just mine, it was feedback from colleagues who attended our sessions last year. So, but thank you so much for, imparting your knowledge. Your passion and enthusiasm for languages is so clear, and it's wonderful to hear, and it just gets us all going, I'm sure. I really hope, colleagues, that you found that session really useful, and it has helped in terms of, reassuring you and guiding you in terms of deep dives, and giving you some support and strategies in terms of differentiation. And then obviously towards the end, huge amounts of resources that are out there that you can go and check out once, you get access to these slides, which will hopefully be very soon. I'll send you a follow-up email with details about how you can access our members area, and that's the closed, password protected area. You'll have a password for that to be able to access the slides that Crystal will send over, and the recording from today, so you can revisit that. But a huge thank you to Crista for leading the session for us today. Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us. I really hope you found it valuable. Look forward to seeing you very, very soon. I've popped a link to the feedback form in the chat, and you'll also have that by email as well. Your feedback's so important to us. Please do let us know what's been useful today, what you'd like us to look into further, any further support in terms of MFL that we can revisit next year. We've got MFL back on that, the agenda in terms of our curriculum CPD programme for next academic year. So please do let me know what you want us to focus on, and we'd love to welcome you back to a session next year, if not more anyway. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Crista, and I shall let you go and crack on with your afternoons and hopefully a bit of lunch. So thanks again. See you soon.